Recording in progress.
So what happened to summer? Jeez,
Okay, call the meeting to order at 9:31. Brian, can you call attendance, please?
Yeah.
Or take attendance?
And if I could, Mr. Chair, two members have indicated delayed arrival.
Right.
Lance Baird and Jessica Flintoff.
Right.
Next on my list is Mitch Goodsit.
Here. On Zoom.
Excellent. Mr. Gordon.
Here.
Mr. Hyde.
Here.
Mr. Perry.
Here.
Mr. Reed.
Here.
And I am here.
And Chief is not listed. We should
Correct.
put him as an ex officio
Fair enough. However we prefer.
because he is here. Okay, we have an agenda. Any changes to the agenda? I'll take that as,
Are you sharing your screen?
I'm sorry?
Yeah, I got my volume on.
Thank you.
You want to turn the camera off or you want to leave it on?
Oh,
Not yet.
How is that
Zoomed in a little bit.
You're probably on as,
Somebody on the interweb turned you on.
there we go.
Okay, without objection, we'll adopt the agenda and move on to public comment. No public in attendance.
We do have.
Oh, I'm sorry, someone signed in. I
Yeah,
forgot.
we have several people signed in,
All right, would you,
and Kathleen Brandt is asking to talk, so.
okay.
Kathleen?
Hello, this is Kathleen Brandt. I just want to tell this commission that I really enjoy watching your meetings. It's lovely to see intelligent, thoughtful, insightful people working so well together, and I would certainly appreciate any recommendations you make. Good job, thanks.
Thank you, Kathleen.
Thanks, Kathleen. Next is Rob Pattinson. Rob, you can go ahead.
Amen to what Kathleen just said, and how refreshing is it to see a group of semi-professionals in a roundtable format working to take care of the township. Thank you, guys. First of all, we are so lucky to have you. To have you, Chief Hood. Thank you for starting this committee. This is now the most important committee in Scio Township. The fire department is the only function of Scio Township that saves lives. In years past, we had the mold in the old building. Bryce Kelly and previous supervisor were too busy to pay attention to what was going on. We finally rescued our fire department and got them repairs to the building, and the building renovated. And that process cost in the neighborhood of $1.5 million. And there has been a massive mistake made in that funding process. And it has put the fire department in $1.5 million in debt because the previous board made that mistake. I invite you all to look at the Sandy Egler memo to the previous board talking about two funding options. The first being a bond, the second being the operating budget option that put them in debt. It is absolutely critical, and I would say you're one of your most important, if not your most important duty, is to get the fire department out of debt and correct that mistake. And 3 months ago, there was the Budget and Finance Committee meeting where Sandy Egler and Jim Murdy talked about this previous mistake, and there was absolutely no solution suggested during that meeting. So I highly recommend this committee get an independent finance director type of person involved to help the fire department work their way out of this process, because there is so little support from the board of trustees and from available staff at Scio Township. And I repeat that this is one of the most important things you can do now. Thanks, gang. Well done. And I really look forward to you guys working together.
Thank you, Rob.
Thank you. I'm not seeing any more hands up. So.
You good? Did you raise your hand?
No, I gave him a thumbs up, but I would move to close public comment.
Oh,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. We have minutes from our last meeting. Thank you, Ryan. I have no changes. Anybody see any issues, errors, corrections, typos? Ofs instead of ifs?
Anyone again move to adopt minutes as presented?
Moved by excuse me. Bob Hyde, second? Second. Okay, we got a Bob and a Bob motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Mitch, did you get the, did you?
Yes.
Okay. very
Yes,
good.
I got the minutes, and I got a lot of other information too. Many times.
Yeah.
Tremendous. They're very
Okay,
interesting. I learned a lot.
communication and/or correspondence. Well, we had a lot of communications from the fire chief. But I think we'll save any questions. Personally, I would suggest we save questions about the correspondence until after we hear from the chief.
The only question I have, David, is did it get into some sort of a public file or is this committee on the website?
Yes.
And can we put communications on the website?
We're working to put all these documents on the website so all the public can see them.
Okay.
In the meantime, though, Ryan, when perhaps if we get, I'm trying to think if you can take the information that the chief sent us, attach it to this memo, and then put it out as, or attach it to the minutes of this meeting.
Create one master PDF.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can do that.
Yeah,
I think Christie has a capability of throwing it all together too on the agenda. Is that right?
okay. All right, can you just work with Christie, see if we can
Yep.
put all this together and put it out on the website?
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay.
Cool.
All right, unless someone else has direct comments about what we got from the chief, we should move on then to presentations, I think.
Excellent.
Save all our questions until they've been answered.
That's the plan.
So let me share my screen here. Excellent. Hopefully everyone can see this up on the screen here. So I've given part of this presentation before, but I've added quite a bit of detail here for everybody. There's a couple, this is going to start with a broad overview of emergency services and focus down towards the end of Scio Township. If you guys have questions at any time, just interrupt and we'll try to get them answered for you. And it's possible that I'll say, hey, that's the next slide. So kicking it off, let's talk about Washtenaw County Emergency Services. So there's a number of agencies that are responsible for various emergency services within the county, and they all work together. Dispatch, police, fire, EMS, the road commissions, and the county has an emergency operations center. We'll talk just a little bit about each of those. On the dispatch side, there's what's called a primary public safety answering point. That's that PSAP. That's Washtenaw County Sheriff's Office. It's the first point of contact when someone calls 911. And additionally, Washtenaw's PSAP dispatches for most police agencies in the county. There's a few that have their own, Chelsea, Saline, and they happen to be located right next door on Zebra. Secondary public safety answering point.
Excuse me, chief.
Yes.
I mean, next door to you is the PSAP office?
Right behind us.
Oh, there?
Yep.
Oh, I'm sorry, okay, go ahead.
Yep. We have a secondary PSAP that dispatches for fire and EMS. That's Huron Valley Ambulance or Emergent Health. So what happens when 911 call comes in from right here in Scio Township, It goes to the Washtenaw County Sheriff's Department. They say, hey, is this a police, fire, or EMS emergency? Someone says, hey, there's a medical emergency. All right, I'll transfer you to fire and EMS dispatch. It gets transferred over to HVA, who then repeats the process. Hey, what's the problem? And dispatches fire and EMS resources. They're actually located in Pittsfield Township. It does create slight bottlenecks in the system transferring between PSAPs. However, it's pretty normal. A lot of places do that around the U.S. So police, most every community has some form of police protection, and it's based on local choice. On places who choose not to have their own police department or contract with someone, the state police is the responding agency. Additionally, they're responsible for all interstate freeways in the state. You have the least control there because they're controlled out of Lansing or Brighton or Jackson. Salem Township uses the state police as a police force. Washtenaw County Sheriff's Office, there's several communities, Scio included, who contract with the Washtenaw County Sheriff's Office. From that perspective, you get a little more control. However, there's an east and a west command for the county sheriff. Resources flow. We have the cars dedicated to Scio, but if there's a critical emergency in Dexter or somewhere else, those resources will move, as would the state police and anyone else. And you have a little more control than the state police, but less than if you had your own local department. We have one commander who actually happens to work out of Scio. He's in charge of the west side of the county, and there's one in Ypsi Township who's in charge of the east side of the county. And the most control you have as a public municipality is a local department. If you choose to have your own police department, the police chief works for you. Costs more money, more control, right? If you're having a speeding issue in a road in Salem Township and you try to run that through the state police, they've got a large geographic area to cover. They may not have the resources to do it. But if Scio Township went up to their police chief and said, hey, I need a traffic car on this road, you'll get a traffic car on that road. So there's gives and takes. Fire departments are a little bit different. Most are run by municipal organizations, by a governing body. Most municipalities will have a fire department once you reach a certain size. That's the most common one we have here in Washtenaw County. Scio Township Fire Department, Ann Arbor City Fire Department, Pittsfield Township. There's other ways you can do this though. If you have one organized department, and we can look up north because it happens a lot up there, you'll have a city department who then provides service to the township around there. West side of our county, it's a little more common. Saline, Chelsea, and Dexter all cover multiple jurisdictions. For the most part, Scio East, it's all individual departments covering individual jurisdictions. EMS is also a component here as well. Number of different types and levels of EMS service we could have. ALS or paramedic care being the highest level of care. Paramedics able to interpret 12 lead EKGs, manually defibrillate people. They have a drug box with cardiac medicines, allergy medicines, pain medications, all sorts of stuff. Basic life support, and that's what Scio is licensed at, the BLS non-transport level. We carry a few medications. We have medications to counteract overdose, breathing treatment, and an epinephrine injection for anaphylactic reactions.
Aren't some of our firefighters EMTs?
All but one are, well, the majority are EMTs. We have one person who's licensed as an MFR, and we have 3 who are paramedics, myself included.
And you have to be a paramedic to be an ALS. To ride ALS, you have to be a paramedic, not an EMT.
Correct, yep. So paramedic and ALS go together, BLS and EMT go together.
Okay.
And we're licensed to the basic life support level, or BLS. Even though I'm a paramedic, I cannot perform advanced life support skills. All I can do is what we're licensed to do. Our lowest level is medical first response. And there's the majority of there may be one department in the county who's licensed at the MFR level anymore. Everyone's gone to at least a BLS. No one's to the paramedic level yet. EMS service also has a couple different ways to get people to the hospital. Ground transport, that's your typical ambulance you see on the roadway. Air transport, We're fortunate U of M has a helicopter that's used often. I wouldn't say frequently, but it's used in critical instances where we've got a long extrication. They'll use that ambulance, the air ambulance will land on a roadway and be able to fly a person into the ER quickly. And then also community paramedicine. This is more of a newer thing that's going on. A paramedic with a vehicle and some equipment will go out to a patient's home after discharge from the hospital or for minor complaints, see that person, make sure they're following up on their meds. You do some very minor things, and that's designed to help keep people out of the ER. So if the ER's got to deal with a guy with a minor infection that can be dealt with a community paramedic, then it's taking resources out of the ER that could be used for more severe things. And there's many different ways of organizing EMS. In the Metro Detroit area, predominantly fire departments provide EMS. There's private ambulance companies. There's county-based systems. Livingston County has passed a millage, and they provide a county-based EMS system. And then there's some hospital-based systems as well. Where none of these other seem to fit, the hospitals will provide an EMS service. Our system is primarily provided by Huron Valley Ambulance. They're an ALS level agency, cover the entire county for emergencies and hospital transports. That's starting to change this morning. Chelsea was granted a BLS transport level license, so now they are able to transport basic emergencies to ERs. Again, air ambulance if needed. If we got a long scene time, it's appropriate. If we're a long ways away from the hospital, that's appropriate. But from pretty much anywhere in Scio, if we have a patient ready to go, a ground ambulance can get them to the ER in 20 minutes. If we've got a 30 or 40 minute extrication on a freeway, it might be an appropriate case for air ambulances. I know we have used them here in Scio, and they're used a little more as you get farther away from the hospital. Most fire departments provide a BLS response. We work in conjunction with Huron Valley Ambulance. So if we catch a medical call 2 minutes from now, both us and HVA will get dispatched. We often arrive before HVA only because they're covering a larger geographic area. We're able to provide care, stop immediate life threats, start CPR, defibrillate, whatever else we might need to do. The ALS ambulance will come, administer paramedic medications, and transport to the hospital. All agencies follow local medical control. So the state develops model protocols that they send out to all the agencies. However, it's a little different having a medical emergency just outside Ann Arbor than it is maybe, say, in Schoolcraft County in the Upper Peninsula. So the states develop what's called medical control authorities. These are generally by the county, and in here we have a Washington Livingston Medical Control Authority. And they take these giant statewide protocols and tailor them to our needs in the area. So whereas Schoolcraft County might have an hour-and-a-half transport time to a hospital, they might need different medications, they might need different things that they do on scenes. It's different than us. So there's a general overwide state umbrella that's then focused.
So we can override state mandates or state guidelines.
So
We can exceed them, right?
we can exceed them, we can make changes to them.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
Make them better.
Right.
Yeah, and tailor them to our needs. Generally, that's a process where the local medical control authority reviews the protocol. They say, hey, we want to make this change. They agree on it, send it up to the state. The state signs off on it, and now it's what we do here in the county, or the counties in our case. Road Commission, you don't think of them as an emergency response agency. However, they are. They're responsible for all the roads in townships, except for state and private roads. So they're, typically MDOT's responsible for the freeways. However, they turf it off to the local road commission. So we get a windstorm that comes through this afternoon. Fire department, police can't get to an emergency call if road's blocked. So the road commission's important in doing that. As we're about to start getting into winter season, they've got to maintain the roads, get them open, and that helps us get to our calls as well. Additionally, if we've got a major incident on a freeway, they'll be able to get out there, close the freeways down, and make it safer for emergency responders to work. And they repair and maintain roads and bridges, and actually they're right down the road too. We've got quite a few critical resources here right on Z alongside us. Emergency Operations Centers. So right now, Washtenaw County supports an EOC. It's located right next door as well. It's a coordinating point for large-scale incidents throughout the county, and it's able to access state and federal resources. I sent a couple emails out about a large fire that occurred up in northern Michigan, basically on the Wisconsin border. So the state activated the EOC to get resources from throughout not only the rest of the state, but the region. And we'll talk a little bit about that in a few slides. But that was all coordinated through the state's EOC. We rely on mutual aid on events, on incidents. We generally use just local mutual aid. It's used for routine incidents when additional personnel are needed, like a structure fire response. In a few slides, I'll talk about how many people we need on a structure fire. But there's really two levels. We've got local mutual aid, and then also MABUS, which is a mutual aid box alarm system. This is a national system utilized for major incidents. Local mutual aid is a reciprocal agreement which allows sharing of resources. We can do anything from a single resource request. If we have a car accident and we're extricating someone from a vehicle, typically takes 8 to 10 people to do that. We'll call one of our neighbors and they'll bring their tools and some people out to help. Or we have what we call a prearranged alarm card. If you look to the right there, that's our structure fire alarm card for Scio Township for hydranted areas. The very top level, blue, it says still alarm there. When we receive a report of a structure fire, we send our engine. If we get there and it's a major fire, and I use the term major and minor based on resource need, not severity to the folks who have the fire. If we get there and it's a minor fire, we're able to put it out, all good. If we get on scene and realize this is a significant fire, we call what we call first box alarm. Brings us Ann Arbor City, Dexter, Ann Arbor Township, and a ladder truck from Ann Arbor City. So on that fire, we're gonna get 15 to 18 people and a number of vehicles arriving. And then we built that out. If for a commercial building, we can build that out up to 5 alarms. We could have up to 60 people on scene easily.
This looks like a piece of paper. What is it, online?
It is, this is a screenshot from,
Okay.
it's an Excel document. And this lives right in dispatch. We update it. They update it in their system. So they know whenever we get an alarm, they know that it's box card 8116H based on the address, because it ties right to the address. And when we say, hey, upgrade my first alarm, they automatically dispatch the additional resources. County also supports specialty teams. We have a technical rescue team, swiftwater rescue team, and a hazardous materials team. We can typically handle some of these incidents on our own. Small hazmat incident, we've got something leaking, we contain it. In fact, we had one last week, I think it was over the weekend, we had a tractor trailer backing into an address, some sort of road sign punctured its saddle tank, and he dropped about 50 gallons of diesel fuel into a waterway. We're able to get that contained and work with the DEQ, all good, no problem. That would be very different. We're not able to handle something where we have a factory that has chemicals mixed and now there's this cloud and stuff like that. That's something that we need a specialty team for. We have that resource available. And we have personnel on all these teams. We have used the technical rescue team before. About 5 years ago, there was this major tractor trailer extrication call. It took them about 17 hours to get the driver out of the vehicle, right along 94 here. And again, air ambulance was used to get him to the hospital. But in that case, we arrived, realized this far exceeded our resources, and called in a full call of the technical rescue team. And it's all area department folks that do this. So now we look at, that's local mutual aid. Here's MABUS, or large scale mutual aid. Washtenaw County has its own MABUS division, 205. 39 of these divisions exist in Michigan. There's different assets they can ask for. There's a task force, which is 4 engines, a ladder truck, and 3 ambulances. There's an engine strike team, 5 engines and 20 firefighters, a tanker strike team, 5 tankers. And these assets can be deployed if, for example, there's an issue in Monroe County. They might call, say, hey, we need a engine strike team to respond to Monroe County for an incident. When the last hurricane came through down in Florida a couple weeks ago, we were actually put on standby to send resources to Florida under the auspices of a statewide MABUS deployment. Michigan also hosts a statewide task force, just like we have a small technical rescue team here in the county. The state, through MABUS, supports a tech rescue team. That team has actually been deployed to Louisiana, Florida for hurricane relief. I think it was put on standby when the building collapse occurred down in Florida. But they're statewide, every state has teams like this.
Out of curiosity, well, it's more than curiosity. When you go on standby, are there associated costs?
Not on standby. So when a team is deployed, MABUS, first 8 hours are free. So we eat that cost, but anything over that we're able to bill back, which then gets billed back. Menominee, they had a 2-week-long fire incident, 400,000 square foot warehouse burned. And the county EOC brought in resources from Michigan, Wisconsin. We had a ladder truck from Dearborn deploy for a week to Menominee. And that was all coordinated, prearranged, and we're able to get those resources out the door. My guess is there were probably 500 different firefighters from throughout 2 different states who made it up to Menominee for that major incident. Fortunately, we never have to utilize those resources here in Scio, however they're available to us.
When you say on standby, what does that mean? Are
So-
they sitting in their living room waiting to go? Are they
Yep.
going about their normal day?
Going about their normal day. Standby means, hey, if you get a deployment order, you got 1 hour to get to your point of deployment. Yeah.
Basically here to the firehouse.
Yeah. So there was 1 team put on standby and 1 in reserve. Never deployed to Florida. They spent 4 days on standby. So that hurricane they did. There were resources from the south all over down south that deployed to Florida. Just that never got far enough that they needed Michigan teams to deploy. So mutual aid goes from everything from the incident next door to, statewide, nationwide. So what's your fire department provide? Let's talk about us a little bit. Everyone could probably guess fire suppression is something the fire department does. It's the primary function, as a matter of fact. That's why it's called a fire department. Respond to building fires, vehicle fires, brush grass fires. In 2021, 64 fires, 5% of our total calls, 33 of them being building fires. About half those were in Scio. The truly destructive ones, maybe 1/3 of those, and the minor ones, 2/3 of the building fires in Scio.
You had 1,200 calls in 2021.
Ballpark, yeah. I'm projecting about 1,500 this year.
Wow.
So when we show up on a fire, there's a couple different types of hand lines we can use to address the fire problem we see, and it's based on severity of fire. We've got an 1 3/4 attack line. That's our primary line. It takes 2 people to handle at a minimum. And we discharge about 100 gallons a minute on what we call a trash fire. That might be a dumpster or a car or some debris outside. And when we're going inside a structure for structural use, we use it at 160 gallons a minute. 2.5-inch line delivers about twice the water, 300 GPM. We use that both when we go inside a building or if we're standing back from the outside because the fire is too advanced. And that takes typically 3 to 4. If it's not being moved, 2 people can manage it, but if we have to move it around, it's probably 4 people to move that hose line around. It's pretty heavy. We also have master streams. We have portable and vehicle-mounted ways to deploy water, and those typically start at 500 gallons a minute or more. Generally, they're from a fixed position.
Hydrant, tanker.
Hydrant or tankers, yeah. But yeah, I got a few slides on that a little bit down there. So how many firefighters does it take to put out a car fire? Pretty easy question, but, right?
Burn all the gas up, you don't have.
Yeah. So we show up and we see this car burning on the side of the freeway. And this is not us, these are all pictures I found on the internet. But we got one person that drives the vehicle to the scene and he's got to operate the pump and help bring tools and equipment up that might be needed. 2 people to manage the hose line. Generally need 1 person as the incident commander and a couple more people with to use the hand tools to open doors, open trunks, open hoods. Generally, our engine with 1,000 gallons of water is enough to put out a fire, sometimes not. So typically 4 to 7 people is what's needed to extinguish a car fire. Our station next door, and we got it staffed with 4. Our officer sits in the right front seat. He's the incident commander. You got 2 firefighters in the back to manage the hand line and a pump operator. Those guys got to do double duty on the hand line. They got to stop putting water on a fire to open a door or to open a hood. If we had 2 engines we could put on a fire, on any vehicle fire would be in good shape.
You can use foam on a fire like that?
You can. Foam does help, but it's more for like a deep-seated fire where the foam really breaks down the surface tension of the water and allows it to penetrate better. And generally with a car, it's just the furnishings and stuff burning, so we generally are able to use regular water. And part of it is, the foam won't penetrate the hood, because it's a metal barrier, so we've got to open that manually with tools.
Chief, yeah, I've been told, I don't know if this is a rumor or not, if it's an electric car on fire, you just let it burn out.
Depends. Everything's situational dependent we do. I will say, if we leave this meeting and we get a report of a electric vehicle on fire on the side of the freeway with no one trapped in it and it's not exposed to anything, we're probably gonna let it burn out. If we show up and that's next to someone's garage or we've got to cut somebody out of it, it's a whole different story. But yeah, what we're learning now is the best thing for those battery fires is to let them go. In terms of putting water on these battery fires and these electric vehicle fires, all that does is slow down the rate of burn. We can get these out and they can reignite an hour later, 10 hours later, 2 days later. We could have that fire completely shut down the freeway for 30 minutes, let the fire burn out, and then we just mop up whatever's left and take it out a tow truck and no worry of reignition. Batteries are pretty dangerous when they're on fire. I will say, and it's not an apples to apples comparison because internal combustion engine's been around for years. Right now, the data is showing that a battery-powered car is about 10 times less likely to burn, be involved in a fire.
I mean, because of an accident?
Just in general.
Okay.
Accident, totally different. That said, our electric vehicles haven't been on the road as long as I see internal combustion engine vehicles. So it's really not an apples to apples comparison. 20 years from now, I'll have a better sense of what that ratio really is. So, with 94 running through the community, M14 and Baker Road being a very large truck stop area, what's it take to fight a tractor trailer fire? Pump operator, again, person to drive the vehicle to the scene, incident commander to be in charge. Typically 2 to 4 to manage hose lines. We're going to need more than 1 hose line in service on this incident. And we're going to need 2 to 4 people to open the trailer, open up stuff, expose burning materials, use hand tools to pull apart whatever's burning in the trailer. And if we're not within 900 feet of municipal water, we're going to need a couple water tankers to shuttle water back and forth. So we've had in the last couple of years 2 significant incidents, one on 94, one on M14. The one on M14 involved 4 tractor trailers, one of them on fire. The one on 94 in Baker involved 2, with 2 of them on fire. Both were hour-long incidents which involved multiple jurisdictions and several water tankers. Generally, these involve fatalities as well as both of these did. And this is only talking about ordinary combustibles in the tractor trailer. Once we get into hazmat, it's a whole different situation. If we have a hazmat fire in a tractor trailer, we're talking 6-8 hours. It's a problem. So bottom line, between 8 and 16 people to deal with a tractor trailer on fire somewhere. About a house fire, again, pump operator, person to be the incident commander, and then we also try to, when we can, add an accountability officer to assist the incident commander. He or she keeps track of where people are and what they're doing, and the incident commander gives direction. So the IC will say, hey, I need you guys to take this hose line to here to do this, and the accountability officer keep track of where he's got his people going. 2 to 4 to manage hose lines. So 1 or 2 hose lines in service. We we need at least 2 on a backup line, 2 to 3 people to search for occupants, and we always try to put what's called a RIT crew together. It's Rapid Intervention Team. If there were to be an emergency, hey, something collapsed and we got a firefighter trapped, we need extra people to go address that. If we're to say, hey, we found some people, we need more help, those people are ready to go in and help get everybody out. 2 to 3 people to ventilate the building, and a couple to establish water supply, many more if it's rural. When we show up in an area that has municipal water, we're able to attach to a fire hydrant, those people can be redeployed elsewhere. If we're in a rural area with no fire hydrants, we have 3 tankers that come on our first alarm, and that's 6 people or so to manage bringing water into the scene while everybody else works. So 15 to 28 people depending on the incident, and that's just for a routine house fire. If we got a significant factory fire or something like that, you can double it. This is a pretty good infographic of kind of how all the people are doing what they're doing on the scene there. You can see up on there's a person operating an aerial ladder, and there's a couple people up on the roof opening up the roof to help get smoke out of the building. A couple people going in, a couple people searching for occupants, backup team, you got your incident commander, and people getting water supply.
Does the ladder truck require a person on the ladder to run the hose, or?
They do not.
Yeah, automatic.
Yeah, so typically a ladder truck has a pre-piped waterway with remote control nozzles.
Good.
Yeah, so, and it depends on a situation how that would be utilized. They're designed with controls at the top because that person's gonna have a much better vantage point. But if it's too dangerous, it can clearly be run from on the ground.
Okay. Is there a difference between a ladder truck and a tower truck?
Yes. So if you look at this picture, you see that ladder truck with the outriggers spread and just a ladder going up off it. A tower truck is one that typically has a bucket on the top where you can have 2 or 3 people stand in.
Cherry picker.
Kind of, but a little more heavy duty than a cherry picker. So we respond to EMS calls quite often, right? It's typically more of what we do. We're first responders to medical emergencies. We often arrive first to provide basic life support, whether that be medication administration to counteract an overdose, defibrillation, start CPR, all those things. And it's about 55% of the calls we do.
You often have an ambulance there at the same time?
Yes. Yep.
Who typically gets there first?
I'd say we get there first more often, probably 2/3 to 1/3. HVA is getting busier, and there's oftentimes they've got some delays. It's not uncommon for us to hear an agency get dispatched with a 15-minute ETA for an ambulance.
What do we send out?
So right now, if we have 4 people on duty, for minor medical emergencies, we'll send our rescue with 2. If it's a major medical emergency, we'll send our rescue and the engine with 4 people.
So 2, what do they go in?
So we've purchased, we call it a rescue, but it's an ambulance. So we purchased that vehicle, and we're running that out when we can first on medicals.
Why would you send an engine?
Additional manpower.
They can't go in the ambulance?
They can, but providing both vehicles on scene gives us some flexibility. Once that emergency is mostly mitigated, that engine can go in service and handle another call. And additionally, I really have a hard time sending all our people in a vehicle that doesn't have a pump and water on it. We've had instances where we've had to leave a medical call to go to a car accident where we might need extrication or a fire call. And if we're in that ambulance or a rescue, we're not able to immediately respond to that fire call.
Why would you need 4 people for an emergency?
So it could be cardiac arrest. On a cardiac arrest, we're going to use all those people. A major trauma where there's a lot of bleeding. It's based on priority of how injured the person is or how sick the person might be.
I guess what I'm thinking is you leave the engine home with the 2 people in case of a fire. 2 people go and do what they can before the ambulance gets there.
Yep.
and then the EMS crew from the hospital takes over. I don't understand what 4 people can do in an emergency situation.
So let's talk a cardiac arrest, right? So that's probably a good example. First thing our first person does in a cardiac arrest, we're able to insert an airway and start breathing for the patient, so that takes 1 person. 2 people to do CPR because they rotate off every 2 minutes. And then 1 person to start documenting everything we're doing. Once we get our first 4 minutes of CPR in, we can switch over to a mechanical CPR device, which takes 2 people to put on. And at that point, now we've got 2 people, 1 person maintaining the airway and 1 person doing the CPR. We've also got to manage an AED. And then once the ambulance crew gets on scene, we need to help them bring their equipment in. And oftentimes, we'll send people to the hospital with the ambulance to help transport because they need 2 paramedics and a medic.
You wouldn't expect the ambulance to get there in time to relieve the 2?
I'll say our response times have been increasing. There have been calls where my guys have taken pictures. There's an ambulance coming to a call with a 32-minute ETA.
Was there not an incident in Ann Arbor where the ambulance was over 20 minutes and Ann Arbor chose of their own volition the fire department to transport the patient to the hospital?
Several times, many times.
Stacy? Go ahead.
Sorry, but yeah, I know you had mentioned it earlier this summer that there was incidents where basically Ann Arbor was quoted maybe a 15-minute ETA, but they were worried about the patient. The patient basically just wasn't able to stick around that long.
Yes.
And they just said, we're going to put him in the back of the fire truck and we're going to go now.
Yes, that's happened many times. There's one that made some news not too long ago. Maple and, what was this? Maple Road, maybe Dexter Road? Somewhere in the Maple, north of Jackson area. Accidental gunshot wound to a child. And, the fire department transported the patient to the hospital in their battalion chief's vehicle because there's not an ambulance available.
We have a new rescue truck. Share with us what the township did prior to the rescue truck and prior to staffing it. Was it just Huron Valley, or if you could just...
So yeah, we've always responded to medical emergencies along with HVA. Prior to us purchasing this rescue, the rescue was a Suburban, so it really didn't have the ability to transport anybody. But it showed up with the required medical equipment, was able to provide first aid and, like I talked earlier, things of that nature. And then we wait for HV to get there.
And if I could add to that, prior to the Suburban, they took one of the big fire engines to do CPR, which took it out of service or whatever. Go ahead.
Yep. And to be fair, when we're at 3 right now, we still run that engine on our medical calls.
It's very costly to take the engine when you take the...
It's more costly, yes. However, if we don't take the engine, we now don't have a way to respond to fires or car crashes and things like that. So it's a balancing act, right?
Well, what I meant was when it's only the engine responding, it's very expensive and hard on the engine.
Correct, yeah. No, it's 40,000-pound vehicle, all specialty parts, yes.
How much of this procedure, these procedures that you're describing, are dictated by law, or how much is at your discretion or the discretion of the local department?
It's 100% our discretion, what we respond to and how we respond to it.
100%?
100%, yep.
Are there practices that are laid out, or?
So our response plan, someone had asked this question last meeting, and I'm not able to give you a firm document. There was a question, what are your response types and what do you respond to? It's a 5,200 line document. There's 5,200 different incident codes, and we've gone through in every single one, chosen which ones we're going to respond to and which ones we won't. As an example, an eye injury. There's about 10 different eye injury codes. And if there's a eye injury that's severe, which means someone could lose vision, and the ambulance is responding emergency, we respond to that call as well. We can get there, we can bandage the patient up, we can control their other eye to stop further damage, so on and so forth. If there's what's called minor injury, no vision loss, no nothing, we're not going to respond to that. because there's really no need for us there.
But how do you know that?
So when a call comes in, the dispatch launches a program, and they literally answer question A, which then prompts question B, which prompts question C, and right on down the line until they determine it fits one of these 5200 codes.
It used to be that there were 3 levels of response,
Correct. Yep. There used to be categories. I think it was 1, 2, and 3.
and I think for a while we were at 2, maybe even a 3, I don't know.
So that system, when I started here, was no longer in existence.
Okay.
But like the most restrictive is the fire department would only respond on extrication calls and fires.
Sort of follow up on that, currently when you respond with rescue calls, you have discretion to transport patients, but we're not licensed to transport patients, correct?
So the Medical Control Authority, who takes the state rules and enforces them here, has a protocol in place that if we are on scene of a critical patient and the ambulance is delayed by more than 10 minutes, that we can use any means necessary to get someone to the hospital. That could be thrown on a pickup truck. The township has chosen to purchase an ambulance, so that it's at least more of appropriate a way to do so. But I mean, in theory, I drive a fire chief's vehicle. If someone's bleeding out with a gunshot wound and I don't have an ambulance, I can throw them in there and drive to the hospital. There's going to be no patient care getting done, but
At least they get there.
right.
Is HVA shorthanded?
My understanding is they are. They're working, and it's not strictly an HVA problem. It's a nationwide problem. The state's taken steps to help increase people getting into the EMS field. I was at a meeting a couple weeks ago with the state's EMS director, and she'd indicated that 10 years ago, their average class had about 22 people graduate. Now they're getting 8 or 9 to graduate per class. So there's less people looking at the field.
Okay, good.
Does that help? Cool. So rescue, extricate victims from car crashes. We do low angle rescue. We got this beautiful river that runs through the community, and on occasion someone gets down and can't get back up, or someone maybe gets down and gets injured. We got to get them back up. We do ice and water rescue, and also machinery rescue. So let's talk about a car accident. Typical car accident, we need a driver, pump operator. He's the one that drives the vehicle to the scene, positions the vehicle to lock. So you'll see fire department, we show up on the scene, like if you're on the freeway, you're gonna see us taking 1 or 2 lanes out, pushes all the traffic over and makes a safe spot for firefighters to work. We need 1 or 2 people to control hazards or fluids, and maybe 1 or 2 people to provide patient care. And then we'll get a couple people from the ambulance company. So if we look at a minor car accident, we show up, we're gonna block off 1 lane of Jackson. No one's really hurt, so someone's checking that person out. We got some fluids that are leaking, so we're gonna throw some absorbent down to keep the fluids from getting into a drain or going anywhere else. And 3 or 4 people from the fire department handles it.
That would be 2 or 3 vehicles. That would about 2 or 3 fire department vehicles.
1 to 2.
1 to 2, okay.
Yep, 1 to 2. If our rescue staffed, I send our rescue intervention on all car accidents. That provides us a little more flexibility with blocking. We've got that rescue where if the ambulance is delayed, we can get someone in there and start really, getting them attended to. Place for people to stay warm or cool. 20 below on the freeway and someone spun off the road, and we can get hypothermic real quick. So now we've got that vehicle they can get back into, get warm, and check for injuries. If we got a vehicle extrication, that complicates things a little more. We still need that pump operator driver to get someone to the scene. When we do an extrication, we always have a hose line off in case a fire starts, because we're dealing with a damaged vehicle. An incident commander to make decisions. We need a couple people to stabilize the vehicle. Between 1 and 3 to operate tools. We have a couple tools we use. One's a spreader, and it does exactly what it sounds like. It pinches it, goes in between 2 points and makes an opening. We have a cutter, which we can use to cut through metal. And we have a ram, which is just what it sounds like. It pushes. One of our standard techniques is in car crashes, sometimes the steering wheel gets pushed down and is trapping someone's legs. We'll use the ram to push the dashboard up off them and get them out. And we also need a couple people to control hazards and fluids, because we still, we've got fluids leaking from the vehicle. We need to maintain environmental consciousness. And we still need to provide patient care. And then there's also ambulance people that need to transport. So an extrication scene, we will today always call for mutual aid if it's a significant extrication. We just need to pop a door open, no problem. But if we've got something where we've got to cut 2 doors or take the roof off or something like that, it's more long-term operation. We're using mutual aid. 8 to 14 people typically on a vehicle extrication. We also respond to hazardous conditions, odor investigations, gas leaks, hazmat, wires down, burning complaints, smoke investigations, all these other type of calls. And yesterday the guys went to a lock-in call. We had someone started up their car, put their kids in the car, started the car, went in to grab something, and lo and behold, the door's locked.
Oh, yeah.
So it was fine. Two kids, they were both fine. Tow truck came. We stood by. The tow truck came. They've got a device they used to pop the door open enough they can reach down and use a stick to unlock the doors. We're good to go.
Person didn't have a spare key for their car.
Oh, jeez. But if that was, say, in the Meyer parking lot on July 4th, that's a whole different situation, right? We might show up and those people might be in distress and we're breaking windows out and yanking those kids out. Same for the winter too. We also do fire inspection investigation. Fire department reviews site plans, make sure they comply with fire code, inspect businesses, make sure there's code compliance. And the purpose of this is to reduce fire risk. Sherwin-Williams had a very minor fire a year and a half ago maybe. They had a malfunction in something in one of their checkout counter areas. Didn't burn much past that. We got in there real quick. The sprinkler system was putting water on it. We put the fire out. They were still closed for 9 months. Right? You're a business owner, right? It's 9 months for a minor fire going to hurt you?
Yeah, then you let the goldfish swim school over, what is it, off of, they're
Yep.
still closed, that was a year ago?
Yep. And DeBella's still not open either.
Neopolis.
Yep.
Still fighting with the insurance and everything.
Yep. In fact, Scio was on both those calls. Those are both mutual aid card calls for Ann Arbor City.
So for Sherwin-Williams, was that mostly water damage? Trying to repair the water damage?
No. Smoke damage. They had to clean everything out. Yeah.
And not all the inventory.
Yeah. Yeah, they were worried that they would have to throw out every can or gallon, 5-gallon container of paint in that store. They were able to find a process to completely clean the outside though. Yeah. So that could have been, that small fire in Sherwin-Williams could have been about a $5 million loss. But yeah, then you look at,
Self-insured too.
non-sprinkler, major fire like the swim school. A couple of years, a business might not recover from that. We also work to determine origin and cause of fires, and we also work to educate the public. One of the things with the laboratories and stuff we get here quite often is request for fire extinguisher training. So, they've got requirements through OSHA and everything to have fire extinguisher training, and that's something we provide to them. So we'll look at our current facilities. One centrally located fire station on Zeeb Road, constructed mid to late 80s, renovated in 2022. I ballpark about a 50-year life expectancy for the building, so we probably got 15 or 20 years remaining on it. And if you look at that, think of Scio in 1988, right? Again, I was in 8th grade at that time, so I don't remember Scio in '88. But I'd expect to look very different, right? Jackson was probably nowhere near as developed as it was.
One lane each way.
Yeah, there you go. So that probably made sense. They started their own fire department, or we did back then. Primarily a volunteer fire department. We had, at the time, 25 or so paid on-call firefighters who would come in for fire calls, and it worked. Here's our primary engine, 2017 model year. Responds out first on fires, car accidents, and medical calls. So I'm really staffed with 3 people. Going back to what do we really need on a medical call, if we show up and it's a minor medical call and the ambulance gets there, our engine's in service. It's available to respond to another call. If we don't have it on scene and all our people are there on the rescue, yeah, not so much. It's in good mechanical condition. It meets our operational needs. Our backup engine, 2010 model year. I'm going to jump back to this one for a second. I'm sorry. Our primary engine carries 1,000 gallons of water. Gives us about 7 minutes time to operate on a building fire that's offensive. So
And Chief, how did we pay for that in 2017?
it's a good question. That I don't know.
Do we buy it
I'll
new?
look into that.
It came out, we had, at one point in time, we had $1 million set aside in a fund called Public Safety. It wasn't restricted for public safety, it could be used for anything. It was determined sometime prior to the creation of that fund that the general fund had too much money in it. And they needed to move money out of the general fund, so they put it into, this is what I've been told. I was not on the board at the time. I was told this by Spalding, who I think actually engineered the whole thing. He put $1 million into this thing called public safety.
Yep.
And we paid for that cash, I think, from the public. I think it was $580,000, something like that.
And then we exhausted that fund when we
Renovated the building.
renovated the building, because those sorts of funds really are poor practice to have, because it could give the impression that a jurisdiction has too much money.
Do we keep an escrow though for replacement of the building and the engine?
I've got a slide on that.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, no, that's.
Every year we put away so much so that at the end of the life of this,
That,
we're able to purchase.
Yeah, that's capital planning that we've done once, and the chief is trying to do that, but needs board support.
Short answer is no, but I'll talk about it a little bit.
as a follow-up question, I actually looked at the capital improvement plan document yesterday. Are you aware somebody's been in there editing it?
Oh, say again?
So, interestingly enough, so there's a capital improvement plan on the budget and finance tab of the township website.
Yeah, I put that up.
And it was originally 2020 through 2026.
Yeah.
Now it's been updated 2022 through 2028, and it has a lot of activity going on with the fire department.
No, that's not been approved by the board. I'll see who's doing it.
Yeah, I just saw that in there.
Yeah.
It said like $15 million going on for the fire department. I'm like, I'm not sure where this came from because
I'll
we're
take-
in
I'll-
the process
take
of
it.
discussing all of this, and it was very interesting. At least
So-
yesterday that was how it was set
I'll
up.
take a look.
In the documents I provided you,
Yeah.
it includes a capital improvement plan we put together. It was approved by the board.
Yeah, it's just odd that the township's capital improvement plan had been updated, but last week it wasn't.
Yeah, there's another new person updating the website in random places, so I'll look into that. Yeah.
Take a look at that too. So this engine today, we would, 550 we paid for this. It's probably $850,000, $900,000 now. Our backup engine, 2010 model year, used when our primary engine's it's out of service for maintenance and repairs. It's good shape. Really doesn't meet our operational needs. It was purchased at a different time in the department. It only has 2 seats in it, so we can't fit everybody in it. It only carries 500 gallons of water, which gives us a couple minutes of firefighting ability. Our water tanker, 2002 model year. This is what we use to bring water to areas with no municipal water. Carries 2,500 gallons of water, which gives us 15 plus minutes of operating time. So it's a good support vehicle. These can be designed to serve as a backup engine, which I think is probably a solid plan for Scio. But if we had one of these properly designed, we wouldn't need a backup engine because we'd be able to use this.
You said if.
Correct. This doesn't quite have the hose complement that we need, but there's trade-offs for everything too. Like the engine's designed with a smaller water tank and more compartment space, so we can fit better tools in there. This is designed to carry water, so we've got less compartment space, so we can't quite fit all the tools we need in there.
Could it be retrofitted to accommodate what you needed?
Not really.
Okay.
We can, when we design them, we can design it a little more efficiently.
How important is it to have a water tanker?
Very,
Okay.
very.
Is there any way to turn in that second vehicle and get a different vehicle?
Yes. That our backup engine has value and can be used to help offset costs of any vehicle we replace.
Sorry about the second one, the two
Yep.
man.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. That's a beautiful engine for someone up north who's running fire trails.
So it has value.
Yes.
For the second fire engine, do you know how long of a lead time it would have to replace it with something that's obviously comparable, but
A year.
within your needs?
A year at least.
Okay.
Yeah, for us to get anything now is at least a year.
Build, you mean? The design and build?
Yep.
Okay.
If we had, several of the manufacturers have what they call spec plans. Hey, here's our most popular vehicles. They try to turn them around in 180 days, but they're at about a year right now.
I think that's what the 2017 was, I think 6 to 8 months.
Yeah. Yep, it's just, lead times right now. This is in good shape. This vehicle is the least used of our vehicles, right? It goes out to mutual aid calls, it goes out to fires in our community. NFPA says you should have a vehicle in primary service no more than 15 years and then no more than 10 years in reserve. So they got a 25-year life expectancy. Makes a little more sense to me to call it 12 and a half for everything, just so that we're, and not buying something to replace a 10-year-old vehicle. I don't know, strange math for me, but whatever. It does need to be retired in 2027, and we don't have a reserve tanker, and I don't really think we need one because this gets a lot less use. So I think this vehicle is in good shape through 2027 right now.
Because there's enough tankers in the area to help us.
Yeah, that and again, less use, less maintenance, less wear and tear. So here's our rescue 2022 Ford Lifeline ambulance. Responds our primary medical calls when we got 4 people on duty. Great mechanical, 10 to 12 years. I expect this to be in primary service. It's a good running vehicle and it's equipped well. This carries some of our extrication equipment as well. So when we got both the engine and the ambulance on a car accident, we've got backup for all our extrication equipment. We've got stabilization equipment, carries firefighters gear. So if the firefighters happen to be out on a medical call when a fire comes in and they arrive first, they got their gear on, they got their air packs on, they got their hand tools ready to join the engine when it shows up.
And that seats 2?
That seats 2, correct. Brush truck, 2007 Ford F450. Right, we run that typically on brush and grass fires. It's our tow vehicle as well. We house the county's hazmat decontamination trailer. That's that big trailer you see behind the building. So if the county's hazmat team needs their decon trailer, we hook it up to the brush truck and tow it out. That's the only vehicle we have that can tow it. That trailer is probably 8,000 pounds. It's a big trailer. We don't need a reserve for this. We're going to keep running this thing until it's starting to cause us problems. It gets not a ton of use, but when it does, it's necessary. This is the vehicle we run back into a field, someone's backyard when they got a field fire going or something like that. This vehicle's actually responded to Ingham County on a MABUS request. Last year there was some significant wildfires. It's very dry, very windy. Ingham County requested a full activation engine strike team from Washtenaw County and a brush strike team. So we sent 5 engines, Assistant Chief from Ann Arbor, 4 brush trucks, and I think a couple tankers out to Ingham County. They spent quite a few hours out there covering calls in the county, but we're not deployed to the actual fire. So here's some positives and negatives of each vehicle. Engine is a workhorse of the fleet. It's got good pump and hose configuration, large compartment, room for tools, adequate water for areas of municipal water, and it's the lowest cost. This is a little bit older data. I put this together in the spring. We've probably seen 10% price increase since I did this. Negatives, less water than needed for rural operations, and it's got less capacity for ladders, right? These vehicles are all designed to work together. This one has a small complement of ladders because it's prioritizing space for tools, equipment, and hose. Ladder truck, you notice I didn't have a picture of that. It's because we don't own one. Positives, they're excellent reach, up to 110 feet. Ground ladders are much longer. They can have a pump, they can have a water tank. Negatives, less compartment space, a little less room for hose, water, and tools, and they're more expensive. I would say a ladder truck would serve as a decent backup for an engine, and if we designed a tanker right, it'd serve as a decent backup for an engine.
And, sorry, Chief, our renovated station would fit the ladder truck.
Yes, it would.
And are there any areas are there any bridges under which the ladder truck could not fit?
Several. one in particular in Dexter.
Okay.
Not much will fit underneath that bridge. And there's several areas that it won't fit over as well.
Too heavy.
Too heavy.
The Delhi.
Okay.
Both the bridges over the river, the Delhi Bridge, and we also use call it Maple or Foster Bridge, whichever your preference
That's
is.
also true for our engine, right?
Correct.
Right.
Our engine can't go over that either.
So.
It's overweight.
That's why you have a dry well.
I'm sorry?
Didn't we have a dry well be put in as part of the Foster
Correct.
Bridge, or was it the Delhi Bridge?
Foster.
Foster
Yeah, the
Bridge.
chief just had us do that.
Yeah, correct. That's actually, we just tested that 2 weeks ago. Yeah, that's brand new install, and that's our main way of getting water north of the river off of Maple.
Okay, so the size of a ladder truck isn't going to be a barrier any more than any of the other large. Okay.
Nope.
Thank you.
No, there are some limitations. Our bay doors are 12 foot 6 inches tall, so that restricts us a little bit. These vehicles are typically pretty tall.
Because we looked at this when we did the
Yeah.
renovation, right?
We did, we squeaked every inch out of it we could.
All right.
And I will say we've had a couple of our vendors say, hey, I've got a ladder truck in here, would you like to take a look at it? And we have, we brought them out, and there's a picture and a couple slides up of one actually going to the roof of the Holiday Inn here. We brought that back to the station, that one will not fit in. It's about 2 inches too tall to fit. All the manufacturers offer something a little bit lower that would meet our needs. Not a problem. Just make sure we got the right one. Water tanker. So this is a great tool to get water out to areas without municipal water. Carry a large amount of water. They can be designed to dump water. One of the operations they'll do is they'll put this giant tank, park an engine there, and it'll draw water out of that tank and pump it up to a fire scene, and tankers just come dumping water. Works great for that. Negatives, less compartment space, less space for hose. They're taller, they're wider, they're heavier, they're more expensive than an engine. Higher maintenance costs in operation than an engine. Typically, they've got 2 rear axles, they've got more brakes, they've got higher horsepower engines because they're moving more power around, and the suspension gets beat up more. And they're less maneuverable, right? Bigger, longer, heavier. So they got some drawbacks too. But, if I've got an engine out of service for a week for repair, I can live with that. I can make that work for the week. So I want to talk a little bit about staffing. Typically, we have 3 full-time people on duty on a 24-hour shift. Firefighters, for example, today's Wednesday. Shift started today at 7 a.m. They're relieved a shift. They're going to work till 7 a.m. tomorrow. It's going to be relieved, and they're going to be off for 2 days. Work 1 day on, 2 days off. I've got 3 full-time people on these rotating shifts.
Is that straight time?
They work 56-hour work weeks on average, and overtime is 53 hours for firefighters working those shifts. So built in, there's 3 hours of overtime every week.
And I listened to the question, I'm glad Lance is here. My question was, have you talked to your folks, do you know how much overtime is desired by your people?
Depends on who you talk to.
And I say that because
Yeah.
I ran lean, and I kind of knew how much overtime they wanted, so I wouldn't have to hire more. You save on benefits.
Yep.
And you have people that are happier because they want to make the extra money.
Absolutely.
So
I think it's a fair mix. There's probably right now 3 or 4 of us that will put in for any overtime there is, and I think there's 4 or 5 that don't, just because of small kids or commitments, stuff like that. I just got married, I have no kids, so I mean,
You're working overtime.
yeah, yep. So
That's pretty cyclical in the fire service, right? And this is traditionally how you see it start. You get a younger, newer firefighter start on, single guy, oh my gosh, I love the job, I want to work some overtime. Then he gets married, now his wife or
now, hey, can I work this overtime?
Maybe I kind of want to do something this day, so let's not work this day. And then all of a sudden there's kids, and anyone who's got kids knows how much time kids take. There's doctors, you name it, and so the overtime goes way down when you have kids. But then as the kids start getting out of the household, you're like, hey, we've got more free time, I could use a little more money. So
I just mentioned that because to me that's a factor in the staffing equation.
without question. So right now, anytime someone takes off, we fill that shift. You know, once we look to a second station, I'm gonna recommend at least one buffer, so that one person can be off without overtime, because there's a balance. You don't wanna burn people out, but people still want some overtime, so it's a balance. We do right now also staff with one paid on call shift a day. It's staffed under half the time, so probably 60% of the time we operate with 3, 40% of the time with 4. Our goal is to have 4 staffed 24-hour positions. That meets our MIOSHA 2 in 2 out requirement with just the on-duty people. We show up, we can put people inside a house to mitigate an incident. That gives us 2 vehicles. We can respond to a car accident with redundancy and extrication equipment, and it does well for us. Current administrative staffing, right now we've got myself, I work a 40-hour work week, Assistant Chief Armstrong, 40-hour work week, and Terry. Has everyone met Terry yet? Terry's our administrative assistant. She's on 20-hour work week right now, Monday through Thursday, 9 to 2.
And I will just note that the assistant chief and part-time unbenefited admin assistant are new within the last year.
Correct.
So it was even more lean before that.
Yep.
And is it a safe assumption that neither you nor Doug fight fires actively? Or
We do.
Well, you do?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay, my apologies.
We do what we have to do. Typically, Doug or I would show up on a scene and take a command role. And in fact, fire in Westview a couple weeks ago, both Doug and I came in off duty. The captain on duty took command initially, put his crews inside the home. Doug arrived. Doug and the captain on duty realized that the fire was too far advanced, withdrew him. Doug took command, and then I came in and managed accountability. So, yes, we're working chiefs.
To that point, when we burned down the house on my property, Chief Hood was involved just as much as everybody else.
Absolutely. I'm not a guy that's going to sit back. Mutual aid fires, we show up in Ann Arbor City and or wherever, Chelsea, wherever we go for a fire, they need help, we're working. Current millage funding, 1.35 mil, Act 33 millage, gives us ballpark 1.9, and these are all ballpark numbers because they fluctuate year to year. About 80% is dedicated to personnel, 10% tools, equipment, supplies, 10% to maintain the building, cost allocation. You know, we pay for the fire department, the accounting department here runs our checks, so we have to pay a portion of that, just all the functions of government that we use. That's pretty typical throughout everywhere else. We did see a small increase from fiscal year ending 2022 into this year, about 4% increase due to tax increases and new builds, and about 5% due to fees for a fire inspection program. That's what we're estimating we're going to bring in. That fire inspection program should be pretty close to paying for itself. Once it's up for a year, we'll evaluate, see where we're at, make some adjustments.
And one thing, I know I mentioned this last night, but something that township does not do very well, which I hope we could do better, Mark, is revenue forecasting. We do a horrible job of it, so that revenue forecasting, we do a horrible job of it. So that just because we don't have anybody on staff with the skills to do it, we don't have a finance director. And this is a perfect example where you've got, I think CPI is going to be at 5%, where it'd be really nice to get a realistic number of how much money the fire chief, for example, is going to have this year so that he can draft up his budget. Typically what we've done is a kind of more conservative, safe way of doing things, which is budget revenues low and expenditures high. Okay, you know, I mean, to an extent, but we really don't look at revenue projections at all, and that's been a problem for the chief in the past, because he really hasn't had a good sense of how much he's going to have to work with.
That's fair. So just kind of 22 to 23, a little bit increase in personnel. We hired 2 people. There were some raises throughout the year. Tools and equipment, down a little bit. A little more in building costs. Non-capital expenditures up just a little bit. And that's mainly due to increased wages and increased people. Nothing really crazy on the equipment, tools, supply side.
Going to Bob's point earlier, there's not a reserve for replacement account line item in your budget or your GL.
Correct.
Okay.
Gets me right to my next slide.
And then your non-cash depreciation hit, do you forecast that at all? Or you don't depreciate?
No, that's done on a spreadsheet at the end of each year, not according to a formula, just in time to hand over to the auditors. It was a subject of conversation last night.
Yeah, because.
It is not something that it is on a spreadsheet, it is not in a proper ledger, and it is not something that's in any form that a financial professional, much less a department head, could take on themselves.
So what I'm hearing is you don't have a recognized fixed asset subsidiary ledger system.
Exactly, and I asked for it last night and the board said no, so.
Yeah,
Okay.
yes.
Just keeping it real.
Couple things the millage currently does not provide for. We don't quite have enough to hire a fourth person per shift to meet 2 in, 2 out on a 24/7 basis. We're not budgeting for equipment replacement. We're not budgeting for vehicle replacement, nor are we budgeting for any potential expansion. I mentioned last meeting, property's going quick. We should be throwing some money into potential building locations now so that in 10, 15, 20, 30 years when we need to do something, we have the property. That's something that I'd like to plan for, and hopefully it's whoever comes after me gets to do it, but I want to lay the groundwork so that when it's time, it's ready and we've got a plan in place. So just to man and staff Zeeb Road, what we really need now is an addition of a fourth full-time person. That'd be 3 new people, 1 per shift. We do need to, in the next few years, replace our tanker. I want to replace that with a pumper tanker, one that can serve as a reserve for an engine. We need a ladder truck. We look up and down Zeeb Road, we look up and down any of our new homes were built. We've got a 24-foot ladder. We've got about 12 to 15 usable feet on that because we need it to actually stick up above the roof line so the firefighters got something to get off and on the ladder onto the roof. Most of our new homes we're building, we don't have access to, and anything up and down Zeeb, we can't access the roof. If Lowe's has smoke coming off the roof, we're waiting for Ann Arbor City to put the ladder truck up so we can climb up there and figure out what's going on. Replace our brush truck, yeah, it's a few years out, not a critical need. That thing's still in great shape, even though it's getting a little older. With all our parks, pathways, and things we're building, we have a need for an ATV with firefighting rescue capabilities. That's probably a $30,000 capital need, but we've got so many areas that are inaccessible to even our brush truck that this makes a lot of sense. Down the pathway, we get someone injured, we can run that down our path. They come with a little stretcher on the back of them. We can stick someone who's injured on it, run them out, meet the ambulance. And then we need to start funding for vehicle and equipment replacement. I figure we probably need $100,000 to $120,000 a year in vehicle replacement, probably $30,000 to $50,000 a year in equipment. Our Hearst tools those are extrication tools. Definite life expectancy of 12 to 15 years. Our air packs, 12 to 15 years, and every other piece of equipment, a chainsaw's got a life expectancy.
Turnout gear is only good for what, 5 years?
10 years.
10 years.
Each set of gear, about a $3,000 commitment, and we got to replace them every 10 years, and we have backup gear for everybody.
And they're now about, what, 6 years old?
We've been
2017
Oh, okay.
yeah, we've been buying over time, so right now everybody's current. Yeah, that's probably about right.
A grant, 2017 I think was the.
Yeah, and we've been replacing over time as stuff gets older. I just don't want to get in a position where I have to come to the board and say, hey, I've got 10 sets of gear to replace at $45,000 right now. And we haven't bought once.
Are you going to show a priority slide? Because the slide before this one, to me, is a good priority slide.
Yep.
So I don't know if you're going to summarize with a priority.
Nice.
Don't have a priority slide. I can put something together though.
Because I think this is,
Yeah, that's a nice way of, organizing it.
Yeah.
Chief, on the next slide, when you get back to it,
Yep.
I don't see a line item for maintenance of equipment.
We do fund that already. So we've got adequate equipment maintenance and vehicle maintenance. We budget this year we budgeted $30,000 for vehicle maintenance and either 10 or 12,000 for equipment maintenance. We're maintaining our equipment.
I hope so.
Yeah. We ran into a snafu this year, and if anyone looks at the general ledger, they're going to see we spent $47,000 on vehicle maintenance already. We had a bill that work done last year that took too long to get in, so it had to go in this year. It was budgeted last year, approved last year, so it's just a timing issue for that, for the $26,000 bill.
Let me just follow up my comment. I think we need to have a needs list and a desires list. That makes sense?
Yep.
Then we talk about need for expansion. Here's where I get into some of the response time data and stuff like that for you. And I threw this in there kind of as a little bit of a shocker, but we get what we pay for. Plain and simple. We can operate one station with nobody on duty in the center of the township. It's going to be super low cost, super low production. You can pick that. That's fine. We can put a fire station on every square mile of this township and fully staff it. Cost's going to go way up, but you're going to get a lot more benefit for it, right? And I think our job, or your job here, is really to find that balance that meets the needs. Because it's somewhere in between there. And there's a number of different things we can use to figure that out. We can look at strategic plans. I emailed a couple of those out for you. We can look at studies, insurance ratings, response times, number of calls in an area, and maybe incident heat mapping. Those are all things we can use to help come to a determination. Chief Dane in 1996, the township's first fire chief, authored a strategic plan. And it was very broad and generic, not very specific, but he said in one of his recommendations, determine the level of protection you need and provide an adequate funding mechanism, right? There's a lot of places who determine a funding level and say, here, you get what you get with that, well, without looking at what that provides. I think Chief Dane hit the nail on the head. Let's figure out what we want and how to fund it. 2015, Chief Furch and Carlisle Wortman developed a strategic plan. And back then, they recommended the station be built and be operational in Wagner and Liberty by 2020. And there's an excerpt from that, and I included that with everybody, but the strategic plan primarily focuses on ramping up for a second station, addresses response time issues he identified, and that I've identified as well. Emergency Services Consulting International, ESCI. This was about a $35,000 study funded by FEMA. Reviewed data from several years, applied nationally recognized standards to our staffing deployment model, discovered weaknesses, and made some recommendations. That's 60 some odd pages, but it's a good blueprint for us to look at. A couple of their key findings, we're unable to meet national standards for staffing deployment. That's a bit of a problem. Practice of relying on paid-on-call firefighters responding from home for emergency responses is really no longer a viable option. That's not specific to Scio. Over the last 10 to 15 years, volunteer paid-on-call firefighters throughout the country have basically been halved. Folks aren't doing that anymore. So as we have less people to respond off-duty from home, we need to look at hiring more people to respond on duty. Staffing.
A couple of slides back, you had staffing needs identified. Will that take care of these points?
It will help, yes.
It will help, or it will take care of it?
It'll take care of the needs for Zeeb Station, yes.
Chief,
Yeah.
can a full-time firefighter who just came off duty 12 hours ago, can he or she respond to a call?
Yep.
Or legally, I mean?
Yep, absolutely.
They're not prevented because they've been working too long or
I
something?
can't require them to,
Oh, okay.
but it's their discretion. And clearly there's situations where we don't want firefighters responding either. If Lance just came off 72 hours and he's got to get home and get some sleep because he's barely able to function, I don't want him coming back. If Lance and his wife were at their wedding and he's had a few beers, I don't want him coming into work. so those are all considerations. We don't allow alcohol use. You can't respond back whatsoever. So there are some limiting factors. Our previous staffing and deployment model prevents effective interoperability with mutual aid departments. Since we've gone to 3 full-time people, we have very good operability with our mutual aid departments, and in fact, they've recognized that and are now calling us more. Scio used to get bypassed in mutual aid responses. In fact, Chelsea had a significant fire in a strip mall, called most agencies within Washtenaw County, and the captain on duty stood over the bridge and watched them all go by because no one would call Scio. They'd send one guy in a truck, which didn't help anything. And ESCI also recommended we investigate options to increase staffing levels to align with national consensus standards. And here's the recommendations. Establish staffing of 4 daily. We've gone from 2 to 3, so we're making progress there. Replace the organizational structure with one more traditional interim fire services director at Scio. Accomplish that in contract negotiations. Hire a full-time fire chief. I'm here.
Yay.
Establish a full-time person in fire suppression. We were able to accomplish that last year. They recommended a half-time fire inspector. We don't have that person. They also suggested a full-time administrative assistant. We've managed to get Terry on board half-time. So based on this 2008 study, we're actually making some pretty good progress. A little more to go, but.
That first suggestion is really a need, not a want.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, all right.
Yeah. Yep, that's a need. And it's also ESCI is number 1.
Mm-hmm.
They looked at locations for potential fire stations, and the data they provided suggested a second station on Wagner near Liberty was needed. Clearly, there's no property available where they had identified that, but this township was able to secure property just south of that. So based on this data here, the Wagner and Liberty station would respond to more calls. However, moving it south, I think it pretty close to 50-50. Not quite. I think this will be primary for 40+% of our calls if we're to build a station in Wagner. And then also they recommended we prepare for future needs as a community continues to develop.
That makes no sense to me. Look at this. Why would you, basically what that map tells me is that you erase one station and make 2. That shows no calls coming out of, and maybe I'm misinterpreting this picture. That shows no calls coming out of the current fire station.
Correct. This is, if we were to replace that current fire station, this would be a more ideal location for 3 stations.
Okay.
It would be moved.
Okay.
So
Got it.
I think we recognize that the west side of the community is growing pretty rapidly right now. And while there's not a need today for a station down there, there will be in the future. And once we shift a station south and west, it makes sense to move a station north and east. So we have some deficiencies in that area now. Not as many as we do in the southeast section of the township right now. ISO, Insurance Services Office. We talked about this a bit last week. They rate fire departments, they measure risk. And they give us a ranking, 6W. There's just under 7,000 Class 6 departments in the U.S. 18,000 have a better rating, lower risk, and 12,000 have a lower rating or higher risk. Anywhere we're more than 5 road miles from a station, we're Class 10, which is the worst rating we can get. And if we look to the right side of this chart, under fire department, there's 50 total points we can get. We last attained 16 of those points towards this rating. That being said, that was when John Ichesco first started. We've made improvements. We've made improvements in training. We've made improvements in personnel. I expect our score would be higher. If we were to have a second station, I expect our score to be significantly higher.
Probably never higher than 3, though. That'd be the thing to attain.
I think 3 is a reasonable goal. I think 3 is attainable.
That goes back to what Chief was saying. I mean, you get what you pay for in a sense. I mean, you want a 1, you can put a fire station each square mile here.
Yeah.
Then you're going to get your 1, but then it's also probably gonna be a lot of money, so.
Yeah.
That being said, we can attain a class 1 department. We can, I promise you. We can't afford it.
And so what do you think is kind of a reasonable goal? 3?
I think if we had a second station, we can attain a class 3 rating. I need a second station running, and I need a couple years of data for ISO to look at, but I think we can reach a class 3 department. So some areas of improvement, ladder service out of 4 possible points. We got 0.6 because we're relying on a mutual aid ladder truck. Deployment, how we respond. We earned 1.42 out of 10 points. For personnel, out of a possible 15, we got under 4 points. We've made improvements there. Training, out of 9, we got 1.26. We've made improvements there. Inspection and flow testing, that relates to hydrants. 2.5 out of 7 points. So simply a hydrant maintenance system or plan in place would score us points there. Then community risk reduction, part of what our assistant chief's doing is looking at community risk reduction, and that can score us points too.
And Chief, where are we at with hydrant maintenance? I know that's been a gap.
It's still a gap.
It's still a gap because we need the capacity of the water department to help us, our utilities team.
When I talked to Assistant Chief Armstrong the other day at the Halloween party, he mentioned to me that the water department was looking into it because I pointed out that I had seen some hydrants that either looked rusty or some that hadn't been painted in quite a few years.
Yeah.
Who knows if they've been flushed or maintained in any other
Yeah,
condition.
so a realistic program would take, areas of the township at a time, and it doesn't have to be the entire township done annually, right? You can say, hey, we're gonna do the uplands, we're gonna flow test 3 or 4 hydrants, we're gonna go through, we're gonna maintain the hydrants, open them, close them, drain them, lubricate them, make sure they're all working. And then next year they're gonna do this section, and then next year this section, and so on and so forth. So it doesn't have to be this giant thing, but that's going to get us a lot more credit, and it's going to make sure our hydrants work. We actually, during training one afternoon, found a problem. We were running some drills, and we hooked up to a hydrant and turned it on, and the guys couldn't get hardly any water out of it. Turns out somehow a valve was closed, so there was a supply issue. Fortunately, we found it. Hydrant testing finds these issues as well.
Is hydrant testing performed by the fire department?
Not typically.
Good.
Yeah, it's typically a utilities function.
And how many hydrants do we have, do you know?
I don't off the top of my head.
It's just around 8 or something.
Around 800?
Okay.
800?
That seems reasonable.
Okay.
And each one takes an hour to test? Assuming no problems.
I wouldn't, I'd say much less than that.
Okay.
I mean, they'd open up the cap, turn the nut on, let it flow for a few minutes, close it back down, pump it out, lubricate it in 10 minutes.
10, 15.
What does this mean to the community when you test it? I mean,
It's reliability of your water supply.
Doesn't this disrupt mineral deposits?
It does. It may disrupt some mineral deposits, but it also helps flush them out of the
It
system.
does, but I mean temporary.
Yeah.
There are other communities that do this, and what they generally do is they notify people of the neighborhood either on a schedule or when this is expected to happen, so they're aware.
Dexter does that, for instance. Yeah.
Celine does.
It also helps making sure I know there's been a few, what was it, polo fields? There was a hydrant that was covered
Yep.
with a bunch of bushes and stuff like that.
Helps identify areas
So,
like that, yeah.
so it also helps with that too. So,
So one right up the road that has a fence right next to it.
so yeah.
And a couple are painted pink, which I just wanted to
I
point
can
out.
live with that.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, there's a couple on Baker that are like that.
A community I used to work in, the neighboring community had a downtown area, and one of the projects was all the downtown hydrants were painted so it looked like a dog with spots. And you could still find them, and it was great, but whatever.
Do you have
The
a
important
map
part
of
is they
them?
work.
Do you have them all located for you?
We do.
Good.
Generally, we know which areas have them, and in an emergency scene, we will typically spot them visually as we're driving up. But they're laid out in a regular distance apart and things like that. We know down in the uplands, there's a lot of them that are in the cul-de-sacs. So I always know there's one typically in a cul-de-sac. So.
This is Mitch. Could I contribute a little bit? It's hard to talk this way. But I
Please,
just
Mitch,
have
go ahead.
a few suggestions. One is I do live in the uplands, and I walk through a lot of the other you know, developments, and I noticed that there's no markings near the fire hydrants to stop people from parking near them. In a lot of other places, I think they usually have the curb painted red or something like that to keep people from parking near fire hydrants. I think that would really help safety because people still do park right next to a fire hydrant, which is no good for you.
It's a great point.
And that would ease in identifying them too. If we see a red or yellow stripe on the road, we know there's a hydrant there.
Yes, so that everyone would notice it. And also, you know, I got so much information to go through, but that you sent us. In the staffing analysis report, the one that you discussed, they mentioned that this was going to be a grant proposal, I think, to the federal government.
Yes.
Was it ever submitted as a grant proposal?
Yes, so the FEMA, and the grant they're referring to is called SAFER. It's staffing for emergency something or other. Since I've been here every year, we've applied for a SAFER grant, but have not received one yet.
I see.
I'm still optimistic we could receive that grant this year, and that would cover our 3 additional people.
Do we know why we haven't received one? What are we missing?
So, the feedback has been the grant requests have always been good, but there's hundreds of communities applying for them for limited funds.
Because we did get a SAFER grant 5 years ago. Were you here for that? Maybe
I believe that's what funded. I believe that's what funded this study.
Yeah.
Okay.
The SCI study.
And we still have our ARPA funding, yet unbudgeted, that could be used for some of this, the Recovery Act.
Will you ever apply for any AFG grants?
Yes.
Okay.
In fact, we this year we were awarded
There's been a resistance.
wellness and fitness equipment and costs for physicals
That's
this
what
year.
I thought. I just didn't know what.
2017 was the turnout gear.
Okay.
I got that. I think a long time ago, our air trailer was a
Yep.
AFG. There was a point in time where we stopped going for grants because of the cost of it, which we are only responsible for 10%, so I don't know why you wouldn't keep going for a grant. It's 10% instead of 100%, but that was the thinking then is, I think after the air trailer was purchased, there was a pretty big gap of not going for grants when a lot of other municipalities in this county went after them and got them. Even some as like a group like Washington County, hey, 7, 8 departments went in on hose, gear, extrication tools and got awarded it, and we didn't participate because of finances.
Yeah, I happened to go through some of the AFG stuff yesterday, and I noticed that obviously there's some very large communities that are in there. You know, I think City of Houston was in there, LA County, but there's Yakutat, Alaska, which is a very small community. Some of these people are getting money, obviously, for equipment and for different things. Some of these people got hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars towards like vehicles or equipment or things. And anything that could obviously, it's not recurring money generally. You have to apply every fiscal year, from my understanding, but at least it would help with some of these costs.
So this year we applied for 4 grants from FEMA. One for wellness fitness, which was awarded. We have outstanding, requested $1 million towards a ladder truck. Requested 3 people, and we also have about $27,000 in fire protection and safety equipment for public education still outstanding that hasn't been awarded. So those 3 components are still available for award, but FEMA hasn't awarded anything in probably a month now. So,
is there any money from the state level as far as from the state of Michigan?
very little. We did apply for a training grant this spring that was not awarded.
So those 3 outstanding grants, is there a life, do they expire at the end of this year or?
So they expire when funding expires. They dedicate X amount of funds towards them, and they're reviewed, placed in rank order, and then they start awarding them.
How do you know the ranking?
We don't.
You only know until, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think they'll call or email the fire chief saying, hey, what's your banking information for said grant? And that's kind of when you know, okay, cool, we got awarded this. And there's also still, are you still interested in this grant?
Yeah, I'll typically, if we're gonna get something awarded, say on a Friday, I'll get a call from one of our senator's office on a Wednesday. So, no phone call yet today. I'm watching.
Do we know how to lobby for this or campaign for it?
Yes, yeah. So do you want to talk a little bit about the lobbying? The chief's been really good at working with GCSI. So GCSI is a lobbying firm, and that was a bit of an education for me coming to the township, that they're kind of the lobbying firm for everyone. Right?
Yeah, no, you're right.
Yeah.
Multi-client lobbyist.
Yeah, real multi-client lobbyists. So they are our lobbyists, and we do pay them every month to be our lobbyist. And the chief has been very good at getting in front of them and advocating for some more funding. Do you want to talk a little bit?
Yeah, real briefly,
Briefly?
With this large project that I'd like to do and building a second fire station, we've utilized them and sought out state funding resources to help either offset the costs or whatever we can do. That's still in process. So we have some potential yet this year to get some state funding to help offset costs of a building or equipment. But again, nothing's guaranteed, and we can only do what we can do. But yeah, we are working with lobbyists on helping offset those costs.
We work closely with Lizinski and others.
Yes. Okay. And the township has been successful using that avenue for some of its parks and stuff and pathways. We've got some funds in there, and it's an avenue I'd like to use to help improve our fire service.
The lobbying group helps with the parks and pathways. Preservation.
Yeah.
There's a few.
Yeah. And as a board, we need to get more organized on priorities.
Priorities for
Township.
our lobbying effort.
Yeah.
So if we look at
Bill spreads it out over all the lobbying efforts.
Yeah, we split it across the funds that use it.
So jumping back in.
Can we do a quick process check? I don't know how many more slides he has and what time we expect to run today, and what we want to accomplish. Remaining time?
Yeah, we are approaching 2 hours. We have no old business. The only thing we would have would be new business and public comment. And new business would be to try to act on or to try to come up with a list that we can then start to act on.
So I'll try to buzz through the rest of these as quick as I can. ISO identifies areas with 10 and 10W as being more than 5 road miles from a station. The 3 corners of the township, the south, east, and west, and the northeast all exceed that 5 road miles. Our most densely populated area is the southeast. Here's kind of a blow-up of those neighborhoods. Response times, here's something that we can look at. And pardon my chicken scratch on paper here, but response time goals be under 6 minutes from when we get a call. We've got some turnout time built in there, and then about 4 to 4.5 minutes response time. 13 sections where we don't meet that response time goal. Those are all identified there. That's our average response time to these areas. Average response time is 9 minutes and 13 seconds as of last year, and we meet our goal of 6 minute response time 42% of that time. So we can look at numbers of calls in areas where we don't meet our response time. Higher population densities have higher numbers of responses. And if we see that bottom southeast section, 65 calls down there, we don't meet our response time last year.
Is it fire and EMS or
Correct.
just fire?
Everything.
Okay.
Yep. Heat mapping shows where our calls are. This is data from last year. And you can see higher density population areas we respond to more frequently.
We have big developments on the west there.
Correct. Right now we're still meeting our response time goals there. So I'm less concerned about that. The area we're not meeting the response time goals is the southeast. Benefits of constructing and staffing the second building. Response times will be reduced to at least 40% of the community. Bring the southeast area into the 6 minute response time goals as redundancy to the system. If one station's out on a call, we have a second station immediately ready to respond. Stacked response, we can send 1 vehicle, 2 vehicles, 3 vehicles, whatever we have available. And it's going to improve our ISO, potentially reduce homeowners insurance costs.
Is that rating township-wide?
Township-wide, yep.
So the average is how they rate it?
So Basically, what they do is they
Worst case.
they start with 0 points, and then they evaluate various aspects and add points. And once you reach 10 points, you're now a level class 9. Once you reach 20 points, you're a class 8, and right on up. Anything over 5 miles from the station is automatically a 10. So really, recommendations for station improvements. Build and staff a second station at Liberty and Wagner. I think my data, what I see, that's our biggest need right now. I think in the next 2 to 3 years, 1 to 3 years, purchase a few acres, Baker and Jackson area. When we need to build a station there, we build it, but that's going to be data driven. We don't have that need today. And then I think purchasing 2 to 4 acres on Miller, somewhere near east-west Delhi, over the next 3 to 10 years, will allow us to move the station north and east and serve that area better when we need to replace the Z Road station.
Chief, the current map that you have here, do those red dots indicate the 6 minutes or less, the optimal location for 6 or less?
Yeah, based on previous run data. That's for call volume data from like 2014 through 17.
Okay.
That would be optimal.
It says 4-minute travel in each of them.
Yep. Yeah, and the red dot, that was the ideal location based on that.
4-minute travel.
Yep.
And in these 3 slides, is it currently served by municipal water and sewer?
2 of them are.
2 of them are?
Yeah. Yep. And I don't believe that to be an issue for us. If we've got one station where if we exhaust our water, we've got to come back to a hydranted area and fill up, I think we're okay with that. Ballpark, rough numbers, and I threw that qualifier in there to build a station. I'm a fire chief, not a construction manager. We're looking at, $600,000 for plans. We're looking $4.5 to $6 million to build a building, 2 to 3 in equipment. Ballpark $7 to $10 million in 2 to 3 years to get a station functional. So I threw together. So I would call this my ideal optimistic. What I'd love to see, right? This would be spectacular. I don't think it's needed, number one, nor do I think it's cost effective. But an engine/tanker, they would be cross-staffed with 3 people at the Z Road station and a battalion chief at that station. That meets your 2 in, 2 out of that 2 in, 2 out of that building, and will serve as an engine for the primary response and a tanker to back up the other station in municipal area and areas without municipal water. Our Wagner Road station, same thing, an engine/tanker with 3, a ladder truck with 3, and a rescue with 2. And we license it for BLS transport.
What's that mean?
That means it would be able to transport people to the hospital.
Oh, okay.
Basic life support.
Yep, basic life support. That's a big number, right? That's 45 people. We'd have 15 on shift, 14 on shift with 12 a day minimum. That's how it break down: a captain, 3 lieutenants, 11 firefighters. Add some administrative staff. I think as we evaluate this, something that's critical for us is a training officer. We're doing much better at training, however, we still have a long ways to improve. We've got one person managing training all our firefighters. We've got consistency of training. We've got one person getting it done the right way, so we're all on the same page. And additionally, that person could be looking through our reports, doing quality assurance, and improving there as well. We could really staff up our prevention staff. The AC fire marshal exists, add a full-time inspector. We'd be able to get through all our buildings in probably a year to year and a half. Most expensive though, right? We're going to spend a lot of money on suppression people. Ballpark for building, maintenance, repair, around 1.2. That includes some funds for equipment and vehicle replacement. Administrative cost is a little bit higher, prevention cost is higher, and it's pretty expensive. These are ballpark numbers. I don't know how, they're pretty close, but again, I'm not in finance, I'm a fire chief. I think this will meet our needs for 15 or more years.
Those costs were annual.
Yep, that's an annual cost. We look at a more realistic approach. We decide we're going to staff our engine and our tanker here at Station 1 on Z with 3 people, or BC with 1. The second station, we put our ladder truck down there, and then we use a tanker to come out into the rural areas of the Z Road Station's coverage area, and license our rescue at 2. That puts us at 33 people. It's 11 a shift, 9 a day. So we could have 1 or 2 people off before we have to pay overtime. A few less firefighters, less lieutenant. Kept the administrative staff up roughly the same. Brings costs down quite a bit, you know. I think that's going to meet our needs for the next 10 years. I envision probably 10 years or so, we're going to really be talking about doing something on the west side of Jackson, West End. That's my guess. It's not fact. I don't know that, but just a guess. Option 3 for staffing. We staff 8 people a day. We run 1 engine and a tanker out of Z, engine and a ladder out of Wagner. They're cross-staffed with the same people. And when we got everybody on duty, we can have the rescue and service as well. It's our least cost option, 8 per shift, 7 a day, 24 people in the department for suppression. And we could even do the halftime fire inspector, which help Doug's workload. Least cost for this option, it's going to meet our needs for the next 4 to 7 years. I think one of our challenges is if HVA isn't able to continue to recruit more people, we're going to have more pressure put on us to license our vehicle to transport. I think that's probably coming sooner rather than later. So ballpark, what we need to do, and what this committee really needs to be tasked with, is figure out what we need and how to fund it. Establish, I think, a millage rate necessary to equip and operate a station over the next 2 to 3 years, and make sure we can fund into the future. And here we are. Sorry, information overload.
No, it's great.
I had a few detailed questions.
Yes.
For the presentation.
Yes.
I'll just ask a couple. Engine 16-2, you mentioned you had electrical issues from the get-go. That was in the documents. And my question is, where's the warranty?
Lemon Law.
Engine 2.
Huh?
Lemon Law.
Which engine 2? Is this the old 2001 Pierce, or somewhere we in 2017?
Which document are you
switched?
looking at? Was that one of like Chief Furch's?
Is it 16?
I could look it up and I'll find it.
So when we bought the 2017 engine, we reclassified that as engine 1 when we bought it, and the 2-man Spartan Rosenbauer 2010 became engine 2. But before that, engine 2 was our first out primary one. That was a 2001 Pierce, and that one had a bunch of electrical
Okay.
issues.
I
So
think-
it might have been that one.
I think that relates to Chief Furch's presentation in 15, and that vehicle's since been removed from service.
Also, you had a chart of operational cost for the vehicle controls, building vehicles. My question was that an annual, or was that?
Yep.
Yeah, there was some line items in there I thought were questionable.
Which,
We can find that one pretty quickly.
is it on this?
Yeah. No, it wasn't in the presentation. It was in the handout.
Okay.
It was a standalone part of the handout.
Okay.
Anyway,
I could find that, yeah.
Printed them out. Old school, sorry.
vehicle repair was, I wrote that down, it was something like $140,000 per year for vehicle repair.
No, that's probably vehicle replacement. Enough to fund vehicle replacement.
I mean, in an escrow type.
Yeah.
So we dedicate,
Okay, that,
Yeah,
it
yeah,
wasn't,
yeah, yeah.
that's what I mean, there was some questionable line items that didn't
Yeah.
so
jive to me for an annual cost.
So I estimate if we had about 100,000 a year right now, we would need to be putting into a vehicle replacement fund to.
If you pull up that email, I just turned off, I had it up there.
No, I'll see what I can.
All right, keep going, we can answer that later, I guess. I asked you the overtime question, I think.
And Chief, the options 1, 2, and 3 don't include what you'd need for vehicle equipment replacement, or
They do.
they do?
Yep, options 1, 2, and 3, I rolled in.
Okay.
We need equipment and vehicle replacement as well as maintain our buildings.
Okay, and then, but they don't include land purchases for future
No.
stations? Okay,
And I noticed that you are saying purchase 2 to 4 acres or whatever it was.
Yep.
Within, at such a point in time, and then another 2 to 4 at another point in time. And that doesn't take into account finding the property and buying it now versus trying to find it and buy it at that point in time. It's going to be a lot more expensive.
Property will never be cheaper than it is today.
And we do have a piece of property on Jackson. Might not be ideal, but we do have a piece of property.
Yeah, and a Stabler there? Stabler?
And it's Stabler. I know it's at the end of a dead-end road.
I was thinking the property on Miller in front of the power generation area. You know what I'm talking about?
Yep.
That can't be desirable for building a house or anything. It's got to be pretty cheap.
You're talking about the
I don't know how big it
substation?
is. What's that?
The substation that's on Miller?
Yeah. It's just west of West Telville.
It's a great point.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
I'm talking about.
Well, it's probably not.
You're not going to build a house there. It's got to be cheap property if they're willing to. So.
I was gonna say, is it up for sale?
Hmm?
Is it up for sale or is it owned by? That's the question.
Look on the assessor's plat, man.
Yeah, take a look at the
You
SA.
know the substation that's
Power
on
station.
Miller?
Yeah, on Miller. No, the.
Where the oil rig
the
was.
substation.
No, it's near where the oil.
No, it's actually west
of that.
Yeah.
West of that.
West of that.
The oil rig was on the corner of West Delhi.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this is just west of that, where the power lines run.
Yeah, ITC.
And sometimes the police sit, you know,
Yep, I've noticed
Yeah.
that.
50
It's
miles an hour
noticeable,
cruise control, but
I
anyway.
know.
That and HRD.
Are you talking about the woods?
No, not at
Just
all.
the open field there where the
Yeah.
gas pipes come up and go back down again?
Well, I don't know about that, but it has a
Gas pump.
substation and set back in.
Okay, all right.
It's got to be at least 2 acres.
Yep. Maybe. It isn't 4.
No.
Chief, how big are you, a building would you expect? 4,000, 5,000, 6,000? Or let me just reframe that. The 6 million you had budgeted, what size building is that?
About the same size as what we have next door. Right. So,
Is that big enough?
yeah.
Okay. Your
So-
ceiling heights would be a lot higher.
Yeah, ceiling would be a little bit higher. We wouldn't have a sheriff's substation there. We'd be able to move that to our side of the building, so we'd have a little more room inside the building. But ballpark, what we have for a footprint there would work for what our needs are.
5 to 6,000 square feet.
Yeah, I don't know off the top of my head how big that is, but yes.
And your parking requirements, land to building ratio of 4 to 1, 6 to 1.
He's not.
How much parking do you need?
15, 20 spots.
And the swing room.
Yeah, you'd have to be able to swing around the backside of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Back in my municipal days, back in the late 70s, I was involved in a site selection for the Mount Pleasant Fire Department. And they wanted a centralized location to replace the one that was near downtown. And if you know Mount Pleasant, High and Mission are the crossroads. And so there is one right there. But one thing that the insurance people wanted, the chief wanted, was traffic control. Because it's such a busy intersection, is that they needed a light in front, or slightly east or west of the actual drive. For that Wagner Road, do you anticipate needing a light there?
No.
Because of the blind spot of the hill?
I don't think so. I think we'd be okay.
Okay.
This one here.
And you know what kind of light I'm talking about?
Yep, emergency light. The guys go out. It turns red for everybody. We
Just when there's a call, they flick the switch and everybody stops.
Yeah, I don't see that as necessary.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the vehicle replacement cost. I figure to replace the engine and a tanker at a station, 100 to 125,000 a year going
That
into
gets back to my escrow question.
Yeah.
Is that this one?
Yep.
Yes,
Yep.
okay, yes.
That's ballpark what I think it costs to operate a station.
Did we get those? I haven't seen that before.
Yeah, that was in one of the data dumps.
Yeah, yeah.
That, right?
Yep.
Page 2 has the.
Dave, do you have that file on your laptop?
This
It's kind of a combination of what you
Hold me
need
to
for the maintenance.
Yeah.
And escrow.
Yeah. Yep.
Are there more escrows in there?
Vehicle replacement, capital equipment replacement, about 50,000 a year. This is just annual.
That was the Word file
Probably
from Brian.
Oh, there was,
Should be,
from
yeah.
Chief Hood, he sent
We
out.
can even do like
Yeah,
building
Chief Hood sent out how we-
spent 5,000 this year.
We had several
5,000 gets dumped in, so next year we got one more.
Last week, early this week,
Sure what
I
I
think.
can get.
Okay, thank you, Terry.
Yeah, you know, I mean, that's a very valid point, right? So this year, you know, in this scenario, just this.
Yeah, see, it's commingled. The annual maintenance just to sustain, and then I call the escrow cost to replace over 10 or 15 years. So you kind of have to separate it.
Yeah, I just pulled the general ledger numbers and just put them all in order. But, you know,
Separating two different accounts, that's not a big deal.
yeah, valid point though. You know, if this year we spend 5,000 on buildings and improvements and we budgeted 10, let's dump that 5,000 into reserve. Because now next year I might have a bigger project that needs to get done. I know we're saving.
Are we allowed to do that?
Oh, yeah.
Government financing and all?
Sure.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, all right.
And we adopt the budget by fund, and what I want to continue to try to promote around here is holding the chief responsible for his budget and keeping the board out of your way.
Coming back to Bob's point a few minutes ago, let's bring this back to, what do you need from us for next week?
Next week I really want to, I mean, this is your committee, right? I'm just advising you. I'd like to see us start to focus a plan on what of these numbers are realistic. Is this stuff realistic? What's it actually cost to run a fire station? And what does the future look like? Do we stay with one station and 3 people? Do you think we add a person? Do we see a need for a second station? Because I mean, I think that's probably the first question you got to answer. Do we see a need for a second station?
I mean, I think yes, but what I'd like to do with your 3 options, if we could, is a little bit more analysis and understand if we take your option 1, 2, and 3 before we start tweaking with any of them. And I just want to look at, you know, where does it get us up to standards? Where does it get us up to basic laws? So sort of the needs versus the wants.
Okay.
I'd kind of like to look at,
That's a fair point, yeah.
you know what I mean? And so if we take each of your 3 options, this is just a suggestion.
Cost benefit analysis.
Yeah, exactly, cost benefit analysis. And the benefits I'd like to look at is where does it get us into compliance with laws that we are not in compliance with? That is a benefit to me. Where does it get us up to some desirable industry standard? And, you know, any other benefit like ISO.
This rating he's talking about.
Yeah, like the
That's a
ISO.
priority, no?
Yeah, the ISO would be an additional benefit. I mean, for me, we may value these, you know, we may rank these benefits differently, but those would be 3 benefits. Because I think that the standards get us to firefighter safety and community safety.
And that gives us the number. That gives us the 4 or the 3. the 5.
Yeah, but it is an additional benefit, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree, Bob. So, I mean, I would look at it, those 3, and then options 1, 2, and 3 across there, so we can kind of understand the benefits, and then that would help me select an option.
Yeah, is there a way that you can take the information in those 3 slides and kind of,
I will try to break it down as best I can. And kind of, yes, I will work on, try to get something out before the weekend so we're going to take a look at. And then individually give me feedback because we don't want to have, you know, we don't want to do a reply all, just give me feedback if you have some, just so we're not, you know, deliberating.
you need a hand doing that? Breaking that information down?
I would love any hands I could get, yeah.
What are you doing this afternoon? Assuming there's no fire.
Let me check my calendar and see what I got going.
The safety is part of that rating, isn't it? And subs.
Yes,
My
it
afternoon's
is.
free.
So.
Resident safety.
Should we then focus on that ISO rating as a
Yes.
deliverable or not?
Yes, I'll throw out a PDF, get out to
You
you.
know, I like to make
Yeah.
a clear deliverable,
I think so,
and then we can,
because
converge
it's
on that,
measurable and it's relatable for our residents.
right? The
Yep.
safety part is a sub of the ISO rating, yes?
Yep, yeah, I'd say so, yeah.
So would it make sense for us to just focus on that ISO rating and everything else kind of falls in behind it, or?
Yeah, that might be one way to look at it, yeah. That could.
I'd like to look at the ISO rating, but also the compliance with the laws and compliance with standards.
I think compliance with the laws and compliance with standards gives us the ISO standard. It gives us the ISO.
Not all, I don't know that the ISO standard considers all of the laws and standards that are important to us.
That's what I'm.
You're right, it
getting at.
doesn't. It doesn't. It just looks at the operation. It doesn't say, hey, are you doing your fit testing? Or, hey, is your right to know up to date?
Yeah, I don't think it's gonna look at firefighter safety as much as we want to.
Okay, do we have a desired firefighter safety? I looked at Lance because it's your people, you're representing the people, right?
Oh, naturally, I mean, our own safety is probably.
No, but
pretty-
do you have
Oh.
a deliverable to that we could?
Right.
Again, I think we have to be very defined
I think
in what we're trying to achieve.
two and two out
deliverable-wise.
compliance might be a strong deliverable, right?
Yeah, definitely. In my opinion, it kind of be like the bare minimum.
Road scene safety,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
I mean, is there a list that we can look at and say,
Yeah.
okay, this is what it takes to check, this is what this takes, check.
Exactly.
Gotcha, isn't like, hey, we need this amount of people for this type of call kind of thing, or.
Whatever it
Okay.
takes for you to feel your people are safe.
Okay.
Yep. What standards ideally would we always be meeting to keep the firefighter safe?
Okay.
And then the ISO rating is something I think we ought to drive towards, and now kind of,
That'll reinforce that what we're doing is right.
and gives us something to work towards,
Yeah.
Again, a deliverable, rather than being all over the.
That's fair, yeah.
Now, would these touch on the prevention goals enough? Would these deliverables capture the prevention goals enough? Because I know that's kind of a different beast.
I'll throw a couple pieces together just to help elaborate on that, and what that might look like.
Don't take us too far afield, though, is what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we'll be trying to boil the ocean,
Yeah, no, not that far. But, it might be like, our goal right now with one person in fire prevention is to get through every building in a 3-year time period. And it might be that with that and a part-time person, we're out every 2 years. And the second full-time person, we're every 1 to 1.5 years. I can absolutely bake that in.
And Chief, I want to make sure that we have all of the laws that we can come into compliance with. I don't want, after whatever we do here, I don't want us to be out of compliance with any basic life and safety laws.
That'll be my priority.
Well, wait. How many laws are we out of compliance with? I mean, if it's this many, that's fine. If it's this,
Well, I'm just saying this, having the pleasure of having worked with him, I've learned we've been out of compliance with many laws for decades, and the chief is bringing us back, so
Yeah.
give us the bad news.
We've made some strong work. I don't know that, there's a whole lot right now we're not in compliance with, right? I mean, our 2 in 2 out's probably the biggest. Right to know, we're managing right to know, or the old OSHA violations, those are all resolved.
Okay.
and you're doing the training,
Yeah, training's improved. It's still got a ways to go, I think.
okay?
Is that fair?
But all the fit testing, all the equipment, all of that.
Respiratory protection fit testing's
Yeah.
done every year.
Yeah.
We've got physicals getting scheduled. I can't think of anything
Okay.
else
Good.
legally that we're
Okay.
missing.
Give us the list.
Yeah.
Let us work on it.
Okay.
1 o'clock?
Sure. Sounds good.
So I will, so I don't, obviously I don't live here, I don't have a building here, I don't pay taxes here. But I think what we should do is pick an option that, because it was 2019 we asked for SAD increase, and here we are potentially 4 or 5 years later asking for another one. I'd hate to pick something that only gets us another 4 or 5 years, have to go back to the citizens to ask for more money. And it seems like we've always, when it comes to the fire department, done enough just to get by. So the SAD increase was just enough to keep the 3 people they hired. And it wasn't enough to plan for at the time. We didn't do vehicle replacement costs and put away money for this and this and this.
Station
and this.
renovation.
So it kind of handcuffed us. Even with the station remodel, we're handcuffed to 4 people there.
Yeah.
There's only 4 bedrooms, that's all. So to be able to put 6 or 7 there, it's never gonna happen unless we do another addition to go up or expand the footprint of the building. So I'll just say, like, maybe keep that in mind of do something, pick an option that there is something that's gonna last for 10, 15 years, more than just the 5. Because also, just because the SAD number is high doesn't mean that's gonna be collected every year, if I'm not mistaken, correct? Is that part of the SAD? If it's a 5.5 doesn't mean every year 5.5 is being
3 1
collected?
year for the next.
Because isn't that what the yearly meeting is for the fire SAD, to
Yes.
decide what?
What's actually needed.
So that, I mean, that could change. I mean, it could be high 1 years because we need to build a second station, get the staff in it, get the trucks in it, and then the following year it could go down too. So
That's right.
I know other municipalities, like, I know Superior's 3.5 for theirs. Chelsea's like 2.4. So I mean,
Yeah, we're far.
I understand it's a scary number, but it also just shows how far behind we are.
But if we show a multi-year plan and people can trust the chief, trust the board, that will have the hearing and set the number at what we really need, and only that.
So that's how it's determined. So it's by the board.
Yep.
Every year.
We're making a recommendation.
Was it December?
Yeah, but then
We're making
annually,
a recommendation.
Yes, but once the millage is set by the voters, I'm hearing that the board can decide how much to draw of
Yeah.
that.
By resolution, correct?
yeah,
Every year.
Every year.
December
it has been, yep.
is when they hold up fire SAD meeting.
You made a pretty good point there that leads me to another point, right? You know, we've got 4 dorms at this building, so we can sleep 4 people there. Neighboring department had an issue where they discovered black mold in their kitchen, so they had to abandon the station. They told the guys to leave right now. If we had 2 stations and that situation was discovered here at the second station, we don't have anywhere to house them. So, you know, my thought is that, yeah, okay, we plan to put 5 people in this building or 3 people in this building, but let's build 5 or 6 dorms for unforeseen circumstances. It's never going to be cheaper to build than when you're in construction, right? So yeah, okay, maybe we overbuild just a touch by a couple of dorms, but now something unforeseen. Ann Arbor City says, oh my God, I've got to abandon the station. Well, you know what, we can actually house your 3 guys here for the 2 weeks until you're back up, and you can still serve your citizens, and, you know. Or we have a problem here, we can move our people down there for short term.
And bunk beds are not an option.
Bunk beds are a lot of fun.
No, I think, isn't there some sort of requirement, you gotta have X amount of square footage for like a living space? I know when
Or do you
Francesco was here,
require a
we
little
talked
gate on the side if you're on the top bunk stands?
about- I mean, the apartment I came from previous,
You safe?
there was 4 of us in a room that was probably, I don't know, 200 square feet. I mean, it was tiny, just because that station was never built for full-time staff. It was just the way it was, so.
You know what, bunk beds are terrible.
Yeah, I know.
I think 2 to a room is not an option, especially this.
In an emergency, we'll do what we gotta do.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, we can throw a couple cots in the day room. I mean, in an emergency, we'll do what we have to do, but, you know, if we can throw a little extra planning into that, maybe we got 3 dorms that aren't used, or they're used as offices or something,
Okay.
that they can be converted, you know. And you never know, we might get the township might explode, we might get a safer grant, we might need to hire 9 people to fill that grant money. You know, I don't know.
All right, so everyone okay to meet again next week at 9:30, not 8:30 like I thought, 9:30? You guys are all late. And in the meantime, Chief, we can put together, here's our 3 options and here's the things we have to,
Yeah,
and get that out to everybody to think about for next week.
absolutely.
That'd be great.
Yeah, I'd love to help. I love help kind of formatting it, how it would make most sense, and yeah, that'd be great.
Okay. Anything else?
Just closing public comment.
I know we have, so the new business will be, Chief and I, we'll get some information out to the team, hopefully, maybe by the end of the week or maybe by Monday. I don't know.
My hope we can have it done by the end of the week.
Okay, all right.
Thank you, guys.
Unless anybody else has anything, we'll move to public comment.
Actually, actually, Dave, just, reason why I was late, I was actually at the medical control meeting, and I will say that at the meeting, the Chelsea Fire Department got approved to go BLS transport.
Interesting.
So they are now allowed to transport BLS patients. And there was a lot of talk of potential policies coming down, like Chief spoke of earlier with the ALS shortage and wait times of being able to. There was a talk of ALS agency leaving, I said like BLS type call for a greater emergency call in the township or wherever they're very close by, and being able to allow the BLS or MFR agency to say, yeah, we're okay with waiting for another ALS rig to show up. Because as of right now, that'd be abandonment. You can't leave a patient with a lower level of licensure. So just let you guys know that is coming down. Kind of hits on your point of ALS staffing shortage, which is pretty much everywhere, not just specific for here. So.
Nationwide.
But Chelsea being a BLS doesn't necessarily help us at all. They couldn't come here and.
They could, but if we got in that situation, we've got a rescue, we do what we have to do.
Oh, okay, we can do that.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, all right.
We have an exception to transport.
Right now, we have there's a medical control policy. If it's a BLS call and ALS is greater than 20 minutes out, we can put them in our vehicle that's actually parked outside right now and shoot them over to U of M or St. Joe's where we want to. And if it's a critical patient,
10 minutes.
that's 10 minutes. And then we can load them up and go.
Okay.
We got a guy having a stroke and the ambulance is more than 10 minutes away. We're like, nope, we're gone.
And we always can meet up in rendezvous and stuff like that, but now Chelsea doesn't have to wait 20 minutes anymore. If it's a BLS call, they can say, hey, we're going to take them right to Chelsea.
And that helps solve some of the problem too, right? Because now that ALS ambulance, which is 20 minutes coming into Chelsea, yeah, we don't need you. Okay, they're going to slow down. We're normal. Now they're available again.
I know your slides, I think one or two of your options had the rescue being staffed. So that would be an option if it gets staffed to do BLS here.
Yeah.
If not, move forward down the road. So.
Okay, anything else from the in-person committee?
We have a few hands up. Kathleen Brandt, followed by Jeff Jackson. Kathleen, you can go ahead.
Hi, it's Kathleen again. As I mentioned here, I have full confidence in what you folks are doing. Really impressed with the dialogue, the inputs. I might have one suggestion. In Scio Township, it doesn't appear that we're very good in educating voters. So whatever plan you come up with as an advising group, I might suggest that you advise the board to fund an effort to make citizens aware of whatever recommendation that you go with, because we fail on this time and time again. We're not even doing a basic newsletter any longer. But I believe this should be a separate effort to educate voters for whatever you recommend. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Kathleen. Very good point.
Jeff Jackson, you can go ahead.
Good morning. Just Jeff Jackson, Dexter Ann Arbor Road. The 3 quick comments. Number 1, +1 to what Kathleen said. Absolutely agree on communication. Number 2, I am so pleased to see that this committee exists. It's at least 5 years overdue, but better late than never. Number 3, I would like to thank Chief Hood for his excellent presentation. I learned so much this morning. It ought to be required viewing for everybody on the Board of Trustees and for everybody crazy enough to want to be on the Board of Trustees.
That's you.
That's Jeff.
Yes, well, last night I made clear my strong support to give our emergency services the funding and the resources they need because we are growing and we are building more multi-story, or at least proposing to build more multi-story buildings. And I can't support you guys more. Now, I live half a mile from the fire station, so I feel pretty safe. I also live in a ranch house. Nevertheless, I understand the rest of the township should be able to receive the same high quality, fast call response times that anyone who lives near the fire station should be able to get, and support the second fire station and the additional ladder truck and everything else. Now, I was not selected last night. That's all fine, but I'm not going anywhere, and I will continue to be a strong advocate for giving all our emergencies the resources they need. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Pam Boyd. Pam, you can go ahead.
Thank you. Pam Boyd, a Scio resident. Kudos, Kathleen. That was on my notes too. Think in advance for marketing to residents about the next millage. A better understanding for residents on how spending more money in their taxes will actually help them save on insurance costs. And I think that's a great way to bring education to residents. The other thing I want to point out is the number of very dense developments that are going into the township, and I know Bob Hyde can speak to that. But I had an interesting opportunity last night at 6:30. I got a call that my 95-year-old mother-in-law had fallen at her retirement center in Chelsea. And what is normal, or at least as of last night, is that the Chelsea Fire Department and the Huron Valley Ambulance work in tandem, and they wait for each other and before they go into the building. And it was actually the firefighter that gave me the report on what they found with my mother-in-law. She's fine, thankfully, but I have great concerns at the number of seniors that will be moving into our community over the next 10 years. And we really need to be planning in advance for that generation that will be needing more attention. I see ambulances at CRC in Chelsea frequently. It's the nature of the beast. So thank you. That's my comments. Great job, guys.
Thanks, Pam.
Thank you.
Thanks. Next is Rob Pattinson. Rob, you can go ahead.
Hi, gang. Rob Pattinson, Scio Township. Personally, I found this meeting overwhelming in the amount of data that you have shared today. I've got 4.5 pages of notes. I've got a ton of questions. I'll put that in an email. But
Thank you.
I will. I'll do that. Can the public get access to the documents that you had for the committee in this meeting?
We're working to get them all on the township's website, so everything should be publicly available.
Even your presentation?
Yep.
Cool, great. Yes,
And
Rob.
then as you, go ahead.
I said, yes, he's working to get online.
Okay, thank you. As you were talking about third a property on Miller, the area you're talking about is 1,000 feet west of West Delhi, and the power substation is 314 feet north of Miller, and it's owned by the International Transmission Company, and they have 21.1 acres at that site. So there might be room there for the fire station you were talking about. I'd like to highlight the radios sitting next to our chief and Lance, that at a moment's notice, they can be out of this meeting and on their way. And once again, highlight how important it is that we support our firefighters, that committees are not their priority, it's life-saving. The video for this meeting will be available in about an hour after uploading and processing on YouTube. I know that I will need to view it again to catch up because, again, you had so much information you covered. Lastly, I would highly recommend involving an insurance actuary because, in effect, what you will be doing is lowering taxes by improving the ISO score. And it would be beneficial to quantify that number so that when we talk about, as Lance was saying, 3.5 mils and 2.4 mils in some other areas, the effect will be substantially less because what we're paying more in taxes, we will benefit by lower insurance costs. So I would highly recommend involving an actuary. Thank you very much, gang. So impressed with this committee. Well done.
Thanks, Rob.
Thanks.
Next is Jillian Carey. Jillian, you can go ahead.
Good morning. This is Ben. Hi. Yeah, as Jeff Jackson said, I'm the crazy one that wants to be on the board. Kind of lucky, but not have been picked. But anyways, I'm really excited about all the positive things happening in Scio, and this committee has been very. I watched the video from the last time. I'm sorry I missed it. But this is very professional. I have been, as you know, fighting for our firefighters and our department for a long time. And going from the day that I walked into that building and saw how bad it was to we are now, I'm very, very excited. With that said, everybody, all the residents that have commented, I second, third, fourth them. All right, so I have some insights here. A couple of weeks ago, it was a football Saturday, and I believe it was it was a away game, and we had 4 ambulance for HVA for the whole of Washtenaw County. Now, it was a game day, and you know how crazy they are, even if they're in a way, because people are partying and whatnot. So we really need to keep that in mind, that having our own, we need to make sure it's staffed and available. One other thing, just to be clear, under Public Act Public Act 33, and that gives that is for special assessments for fire and sheriff, safety. So there's been some issues with mixing a millage and a SAD, and it is confusing. It's one thing that I'm really paying attention to and studying. So we have to make sure that whatever we do for the next special assessment is correct and not mixed with a millage, because if we have issues with either millages or SADs and we find out that it hasn't been done properly, that could prevent, it could push us backwards to some degree and stall plans and projects. One other thing, it was brought up about there needed to be an ATV for pathways. Well, as you know, the township is installing or wanting to install a lot of paths. So I was thinking, Clerk Jessica, you would know this. The Anna Cohn, she was just hired, and I believe that there was a purchase for a vehicle for her and also the utility department, and the utility is separate. But where was that, the utility or the truck, I believe it was a truck, where did the funds come from? Was that general fund or was that from the pathway millage?
The pathway millage for a work truck for the parks program.
Pathway, not parks.
Well, parks and pathway maintenance. It's a
yes, I'm
millage.
sorry, yes. Mm-hmm.
So I did pull up the ballot proposal just to see the language, and it does say develop and maintain nature preserves, parks, trails, and et cetera. So if we have, if the fire department needs equipment for pathways and parks, could some of the funds from that millage be used to purchase an ATV?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes, and I just as a side note, I know we talked about this. I mean, even things like the cost of sheriff patrol or other, but again, this is a policy determination for the board. Even taking an incremental step, as I did last year, to get the cost allocation plan, to get those special funds to even pay for their own computers and things like that, was a push. So it kind of takes everybody to agree to a fair methodology to spread those costs, but it's possible.
You need everybody to accept.
Thank you.
Right, then,
And the advocates for the various funds, open space, parks.
great. Anything else, Jillian?
Oh, no, that's it. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Terry?
Next is Pat Stein. Pat, you can go ahead.
Good morning. You know, this presentation that Deepwood presented, my plan was to log into the meeting on Zoom this morning and catch some highlights. But once Chief Wood started his presentation, I was locked in. It was very informative, but you know, it was also a little unsettling to find out that how the areas that are lacking, critical areas that are lacking for our fire department. I'm so thankful for this group, this committee to be formed and resolve some of these areas that need attention. I'm also hoping that this stellar group can maybe be instrumental in resolving that $1.5 million debt that was an accounting misstep. I know that's been hanging over the fire department's head for quite a while, so let's hope that can be on a to-do list and somehow. So I'm also glad to hear that the slide presentation will be available for public viewing. Chief, would you mention that you didn't know what it was like back in 1988? So I just want to give you a clue. In the mid-70s, my husband and I were building our house on South Z, which was gravel by then, or at that time. And the fire department was downtown Dexter. So quite a hike from where it is now. Thankfully, we have one so close by. But back then, there was a McDonald's, a Paul Bunyan's bar, a gas station. And one day, my husband and children were taking a drive into Dexter, and not too far from the fire station is a house burnt to the ground. And my first thought was, we are doomed. But it turned out it was burned for training purposes. So, but to let you know, I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're where you are in proximity to our home, and you're doing a great job. And I hope all of these obstacles and the areas that you're lacking can be resolved. Great job. Your whole committee is awesome. So what is that? Then I would third, fourth, and fifth that comments from the previous speakers. So thank you for all you do for Scio.
Thank you.
Thank you, Pat. Terry?
Every participant has commented.
No repeats.
No repeats. Excellent.
Okay, anything else?
Well, I think it was Pam who mentioned her mom being at CRC and stuff like that and seeing the ambulance and stuff there. I was on Chelsea before I came over here. We did go there quite a bit, and I think right now it's probably safe to say 400 to 600 times a year. They'll probably go
Twice a
there.
day?
So I surveyed Chief Arbini, and about once per unit per year, so around 420 times a year. And that's just as a planning purpose, we're to get similar facilities here. And my wife's parents both live at CRC as well.
Just kind of put a number. I know there's the talk of Baker Road. I think one going in. So, and that's just one of their 3 that they have in Chelsea. So,
I have a very technical, specific question which Jillian should listen to, I think. Chief and our clerk. It's my understanding that our fire millage does not, underline not, contribute to the DDA. We do not give half of the IFT.
That's correct.
Okay. All right. You get the entire amount that's collected, but Headley does affect it.
I researched both questions, and 33 is a special assessment. Special assessment, right. It is dedicated restricted fund. So you can't pull it out and put it in another fund, an unrestricted or other use. And it is not an ad valorem tax, nor a specific tax. So it's a special assessment. So it's not subject to Headley.
So it's 135 every year?
Yes, it's
So
a
far,
constant.
so far.
It's a constant, yes.
Okay.
Well, if the Board of Trustees wants to not go up to the maximum levy.
Right, we could do
We
one.
can go lower.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Okay, thank you, Mark.
Yeah, and we did get a memo a couple months ago, Chief, from Township Attorney Mike Homier, describing the proper process for PA 33, so I'll see if we can share that out. It's just informational.
It might be appropriate at some point for him to participate in one of these meetings, just as a process expert.
Whose fund is gonna pay for that? 4 hours of his time.
Well, I think we could target questions and have
Yeah.
participated.
I mean, we're at 100 grand now for him, so that's,
Yeah.
but I get your point.
If we have questions,
But-
we'll focus on.
Sure.
Yep.
An email with questions might
We'll
be better.
distill them down to writing.
Might be easier, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, anything else, guys? Ladies? All right.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank
Thanks
you.
very much. Thanks, Zoomers.
Recording stopped.
Thank you, Carrie.
That's why I didn't want to do it last week.
Yes.
Thank you, I appreciate that. It's a lot of information.
It's all